gentlemen, please welcome founder and CEO of Pershing Square Capital Management, Mr. Bill Ackman.
Okay, a lot of material to cover, so we're going to get started. It's a long time in coming. We've got 480 in this audience. We've got an overflow room. We have it's been our best attended webcast so far. We had over 6,000 versus 600 was the highest we've had before. We're going to skip this disclaimer. All of this will be on the website. So just basic big picture pyramid scheme. So from the FTC, every pyramid or Ponzi scheme collapses because it cannot expand beyond the size of the Earth's population. When the scheme collapses, most investors find themselves at the bottom, unable to recoup their losses. From the SEC, the fraudsters behind a pyramid scheme may go to great lengths to make the program look like a legitimate multi-level marketing program. But eventually the pyramid will collapse. From the New York AG, why do pyramid schemes always fail? Since there are only a limited number of people in a given community, all pyramid schemes will ultimately collapse. The only people who make money are those few who are at the top of the pyramid. This is Michael Johnson talking about the classic pop and drop. China is 1.3 billion people. You can recruit for a long time there before we had what was called the classic pop and drop in that marketplace. John DeSimone, we went into India 10 years ago. We went in and it was it's called pop and drop. You go in, a lot of distributors come in, they recruit, you get a lot of volume. Those distributors leave the country and you get a big drop. Herbalife used to publish market-by-market statistics showing the pop and the drop, but they stopped disclosing those figures just before the company went public and a year before Michael Johnson became CEO of the company. Herbalife's retail sales in the U.S., the company had to sign a consent decree with the state of California. There was an injunction against false claims and for being a pyramid scheme or behaving like a pyramid scheme, and their sales declined 70% after that period of time. But then they came up with something called the production bonus or infinity bonus, and this was innovative at the time, and it gave distributors, instead of being paid only 3 levels down, you could be paid an infinite number of levels down, which made this pyramid scheme much more appealing, and they incentivized recruiting, and it led to a massive growth over the next, through 1999. But then Mark Hughes died, the founder, in May. The company was in turmoil. The founder died, sales were declining. It was taken private by a private equity firm, a couple of private equity firms. Michael Johnson becomes CEO of the company April 3rd, 2003. And that is a very significant date. And we're going to take you from that date to the present. And Michael's done an incredible job. Look at the sales of the company. Now, how has that been accomplished? Here's some perspective from John Hempton on the company.
Multi-level marketing schemes are scumbags. This one's got 2.5 million people in their chain, and Bill Ackman's case is that they rip them off. When you look at smoking companies, the tobacco companies kill 5 million people a year, twice as many people a year globally as Herbalife has in its network. They kill 400,000 people in America. They're hugely profitable. They're scumbags, but they've returned cash to shareholders for decades, and if you shorted them, you've been run over. Herbalife had 5 years ago about 140 million shares on issue, adjusted for split. It now has 108 million shares on issue. It buys back stock regularly. It pays a fairly hefty dividend. They're scumbags, but they're the stock market scumbags.
Well, you got to, John, if in this case the victim is the lower income population, a lower income population, and the Obama administration could be very interested in that, wouldn't that potentially have an impact?
That presumes they're even affected. When did the government care about lower income people that way?
Okay, so just perspective on Johnson. Johnson was at Disney. He was president of Disney International. At the time, he expanded Disney's business from 34 markets to 80 markets. He created subsidiaries in Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. 2 years after becoming the CEO of Herbalife, he joined the board of Univision, which gave him a lot of exposure to the Latino community. Univision is the most watched broadcast network, 98% of Hispanic households. And interestingly, the Latino community has become Herbalife's largest infinity group. And Michael developed a strategy. And they developed this strategy before the company, and the strategy included the following to address the decline in sales. One, expand globally, including the world's poorest countries. Exploit the internet and lead generation. Target Latinos and low-income populations in the US and globally. Propagate nutrition clubs. Support training programs within nutrition clubs. Now, with respect to internet and lead generation, we went to the FTC in February of last year, and we described this practice, and shortly thereafter, Herbalife has attempted to shut it down, or certainly they've made it illegal, although there's still some rogue distributors performing lead generation. The other 4 strategies are very active. And we're fortunate in that a former employee of Herbalife gave us this document. This is a strategy document. This was a presentation that was made to the senior-most management of Herbalife and talks about the market at the bottom of the pyramid. And it says, the distribution of wealth and the capacity to generate incomes in the world can be captured in the form of an economic pyramid. The top of the pyramid are the wealthy, with numerous opportunities for generating high levels of income. And that's our emphasis there. More than 4 billion people live at the bottom of the pyramid, in bold, BOP, on less than $2 a day. So that's kind of the perspective, and I guess they like pyramids, so here we go. Page 2. An average of $2 per day in income. There's a little heat map of where these people are located. Those are basically Herbalife markets. Huge potential market. 4 to 5 billion underserved, that is, underserved by Herbalife. A total economy of more than $13 trillion. I think it's purchasing power parity. The BOP market, that is, bottom of the pyramid market, needs innovation in technology, product, services, and business models. The poor represents resilient entrepreneurs, and they're value conscious. Okay? Good perspective. Continuing, the poor cannot participate in the benefits of the globalization. They do not have access to products or services that represent global quality standards. Active engagement of private enterprises at the BOP is a critical element in creating inclusive capitalism. They need to have choices. They currently depend only in what is in their villages. The bottom of the pyramid must become part of the firm's core businesses. Corporate social responsibility is not enough. I find that incredible. The poor themselves are willing to experiment, learn, and change. It is possible to do well by doing good. And they've got some photographs of the target market here, and I'm going to expand one of them. And more than 4 billion, the bottom of the pyramid live on less than $2 a day, and these are resilient entrepreneurs, these 2 kids. Okay, so how do you target the poorest of the poor? The problem is you got a product, in order to become a supervisor, you got to spend $3,000. How do you go to someone with $2 a day in income? Well, let's go to, first you got to go to their countries. We don't operate yet in these countries. So we went from, again, when Johnson became CEO, they had used up pretty much most of what you would think of as a market for a $3,000 buy-in, which is the supervisor buy-in. And they've expanded from 58 to 91 countries, so that's part of the strategy. Let's look at the countries they've entered, the last 17 countries in the last 3 years. Georgia, Belarus, Lebanon, Mongolia, Ghana, Trinidad, Uruguay, Slovenia, Serbia, Macedonia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Moldova, Cambodia, Kyrgyzstan, Azerbaijan. Average GDP per capita, $4,851. That's pretty tough to put together the $3,000. Now, this is an incredible one. They registered myherbalife.bi. For those of you who don't do business in Burundi, that is Burundi. That was registered in the last year. That's a country with a GDP per capita of $267. Michael Johnson. What we're seeing more and more is that leadership group is starting to train more on these new innovative methods to drive deeper penetration in the markets. By deeper penetration, he means going lower income. It's May of 2009. John DeSimone, we saw him just on CNBC. This is the #1 strategy of the company. If you take nothing else away from this presentation, this was an analyst presentation, it's that our growth opportunities from going deeper into the marketplace through a new distribution method that our distributors have employed. They've had success in one market, that was Mexico. They're learning how to replicate that success in multiple markets, and that's the future. This is the former president who was fired for having a fraudulent resume. The main driver of Mexico's success has been a highly unified distributor leadership group and the adoption of the innovative Nutrition Club DMO, that's daily method of operation, which has enabled our distributors to increase penetration in the lower social economic segments of the Mexican market, the lower part of the Mexican market. Lead generation, as I mentioned, is toast. Let's talk about targeting Latinos and low-income people in our country. Pursuing its Going Deeper strategy, Herbalife has targeted Latinos, African Americans, Korean Americans, what they call Generation H, that's under 30, and other affinity groups. Today, Herbalife denies it targets ethnic, racial, and other affinity groups, but we will show you otherwise. So Michael Johnson wrote a letter in October to all the distributors. Dear Herbalife Independent Distributor, I have an urgent request for you to email your member of Congress. Some members of Congress, actually I need a little water from the crew. Here we go. Some members of Congress, actually it works over here, cool. Where we are. Some hedge fund manager wants to make more money for himself and his clients by trying to damage Herbalife's business and reputation. We believe one or more members of the House of Representatives will circulate a Dear Colleague letter to other members of Congress urging the FTC, one of the government agencies that regulates our company, to investigate Herbalife. Some lawmakers are concerned that Herbalife is taking advantage of minorities, especially Latinos. I find the targeting of distributors by ethnicity offensive on many levels, and the suggestion that Herbalife takes advantage of any distributor to be simply false. At Herbalife, we strive to change people's lives. This is true, by the way, by providing the best nutritional products and the best business opportunities to all. I know you believe in Herbalife. Congress needs to hear about your experience as an Herbalife distributor. You have the most compelling story to tell. Attached, you will find information. We are talking with members of Congress. We need you to share your experience. Don't let a Wall Street billionaire deceive your congressman. After all, your member of Congress is supposed to represent you, not him. Okay, so we go back to a 2008 strategy document. It shows, by the way, April of 2003, sales are declining, and now we launch the Spanish market strategy, takeoff of Spanish market, establish North American regional management team. They break the team into two pieces, a Latino-focused team and a non-Latino-focused team. Note the flat line graph of non-Spanish. Do I have a laser or no? I guess not. Well, you can see it, the pink. And the rising blue line is Spanish. See, that's where the growth is going to come from. The big kicker, Nutrition Club expansion, 2006. And then in 2007, the United States recaptures the #1 ranking in the world, driven by Spanish and nutrition clubs. When the new management team came in, they asked what the phenomenon's going on in Mexico. Why is Mexico very consistently growing the business? We went down into Mexico and found that these nutrition clubs were really the vibrant aspect of that business versus the traditional retailing-oriented component. In early 2004, we validated the nutrition club concept. And you can see that point of inflection where once that was validated, and we started to communicate that, put that message on stage, they roll out the top Chairman's Club people and have them talk about success, if you will, and create a lot of visibility around the success distributors were having. It really escalated the Mexican business. Similarly, that concept started to migrate into the U.S. in late 2004. This was a conscious strategy. The management validated the concept. This is from the strategy document. Note, worsening U.S. economy may result in increased recruiting as people seek new careers. That's an opportunity for us, and supplemental income. Hispanics represent the second largest race culture in the USA. The Hispanic population of the U.S. is expected to grow 9% compounded from 2005 to 2010. Note the source, the Direct Selling Association, which is the industry association. If you look down, biggest challenge for North America is to turn around the non-Spanish distributorships. Okay, next. Continuing. Given the dynamics of the business, the North A regional team was split into Spanish and non-Spanish business last year to properly service the growing Spanish distributorship business and to focus on turning around the declining non-Spanish distributorship business. The sales and marketing team structure will remain in place for the foreseeable future. Building the appropriate infrastructure in a timely manner to support and service the wants, needs, and expectations of our distributors, our biggest operational challenge. 3 third-party self-funding sales centers are planned for opening in Q2, Northern California, Q3, 2008, Chicago, New York City, that are primarily for the cash and carry Spanish Nutrition Club business. These are the unbanked. Let's continue. North American strategies, because this is hard to see, I'll blow it up for you. open QRCs, these are these cash and carry distribution points in key Latino markets, implement mobile order payment options in our prepaid debit card program, again for the unbanked. Develop new business tools to support ASO, the American Youth Soccer Organization, and pursue targeted market affiliations, Latin, African American. Here's a debit card from that program. Okay, let's talk about our image. We've got to improve our image to drive the 3 R's. Note, pursue targeted marketing affiliations, associations, e.g. Latin and African American organizations. Let's give credibility to the brand by putting the Herbalife name on uniforms. What do we project that's going to do for our business? So this is 2008 document, so it's probably early 2008. They're projecting continued flatlining of the non-Spanish and an acceleration or continuation in growth of the Spanish. Another page, further opportunities for growth, market segmentation strategy, continue to focus on metro areas and states that are underpenetrated via city-by-city analysis, expanded to Gen H, under 30, target additional ethnic markets, Korean, Vietnamese, Chinese, Russian, Polish, support African American initiative with distributor trainings and events. This is from Herbalife Today, a magazine sent to its distributors, Herbalife's Latin gold mine, glowing brighter all the time. Opportunities abound in the U.S. Latin market. How you can reach out to markets that will help your business explode. I got a call from a distributor, for example, who lives, let's say, in Southern California, wants to move to Miami. So we have a program called Geoscape that we can basically look up not only let's say that they only interested in working in the Latino market, okay? So it tells us what's the Latino population. It actually breaks it down by Cuban, Mexican, Puerto Rican, then it layers it by the distributors. So within that zip code area, how many distributors do we have? What level are they? And this is how they also have taken on that city-by-city concept, because they don't only want to just started working in their own backyard. They want to start working in the different states. Ibby Fleming is a Latino, and she's the person that they roll out to talk about how much they care about this community. Let's hear it from John Tartle. John Tartle is on the board of directors of Herbalife. He's a Chairman's Club member. Here he is at an extravaganza.
How many of you would like to get a little more Latino business in your organization? Okay?
Let's continue. How about Michael Johnson? Let's hear, this is a strategy piece the company put out in 2008. It was a recession, if you noticed. They want to get this thing, want to recruit some people because times are tough.
Hi, I'm Michael Johnson. I'm the chairman and CEO of Herbalife, and we have a solution for you, a solution for these tough economic times, and a solution for your health. Why Herbalife? Why now? Let's take a look.
Why Herbalife?
Why Herbalife? Why Herbalife?
Why Herbalife?
Well, now's the perfect time. I mean, you've seen the news.
Let's face it, it's a scary time.
The economy's in trouble. Gas prices are at an all-time high.
Everybody needs money. Markets are crashing.
People are losing their homes.
Their jobs.
People can't buy groceries. People are looking for something they can depend on. A better life.
Our products support a healthy, active lifestyle.
Herbalife has the perfect, inexpensive, healthy meal.
We have the best nutrition products in the world,
changing people's lives.
You can help others to lose weight, look good, feel good.
A better life.
That's why.
Why Herbalife?
Herbalnomics.
It's recession-proof.
When everybody else is having troubles, listen, we're flourishing. When the economy's bad, our business is fuel. I mean, I got started in a recession. This is my 4th recession. I'm more excited about today than ever before.
Now we have the whole video. I encourage you to watch the rest. There's a link to it here. So why is this market segment, why did the company decide from a strategy point of view to pursue it? Well, number one, these people need money. They're financially insecure. They're aspirational. They're trying to pursue the American dream, build a better life. They're hardworking, and they're what Herbalife calls teachable. They're from close-knit communities, speaking the same language, same circumstance, and they're unlikely to complain, culturally, or because in many cases these are undocumented residents. So we've done a lot of field work over the last couple of years. I did mention we spent $50 million. I'm not proud of that number. But I was asked actually on Bloomberg yesterday, how many clubs did we investigate? The answer is over 240. And we had investigators go in and become part of the program, and we took a record of those meetings. We enrolled in training programs, and we observed all of the laws in doing so with the assistance of our council. Just going back one slide if you can. Just to point out, United States, Puerto Rico, Canada, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia. Now I don't mention China. We did a separate presentation just on China. Okay, so how do you grow in this market? The answer is you propagate nutrition clubs. Now we heard from Mr. DeSimone what nutrition clubs are, so let's see what they say. Fundamental change in our business began 10 years ago with the development of nutrition clubs in Mexico. This increased our addressable audience. I have a better term now instead of going deeper. It's addressable audience by making our products more affordable to more consumers. Always find this interesting. In Mexico, there are 37,000 nutrition clubs. Burger King, of which we are proud shareholders, is having a tough time competing with only 449 units in that market. So that's a fairly extraordinary number. In 2010, they said nutrition clubs were 70% of their business in Mexico. We estimate as much as perhaps 70% of our business is done through clubs. We've done some math based on the company's claim that they serve 700,000 shakes per day in nutrition clubs in Mexico. We believe nutrition clubs are 75% of the business in Mexico, and that's the math. Michael Johnson, let's hear how he talks about this strategy. We've always talked about how long it took for the nutrition clubs to ramp up. It's exponential. So you're probably talking 18 to 24 months out into the future till you see maybe the explicit exponential growth. So once they get to the point where maybe over 1,000, 2,000 clubs, you really start to see exponential growth. So I think that's one thing really driving the Hispanic side of the business. I've been an investor in retail, for better or for worse, many times over the course of my career. And what I can tell you is retailers don't grow exponentially. In fact, their growth decelerates over time as they become larger. Pyramid schemes accelerate and become exponential as they become larger. The problem is, how can you possibly make money if you're a poor person in a nutrition club? It costs you $5,000 to $6,000. This is 3 years ago, or sometimes something greater than that to open one of these things in terms of the startup costs. The rules are fairly interesting. You're not allowed to display the name of the company, the logo, or the words nutrition club or shakes, or any implication that it's an Herbalife business outside. You can't advertise and you can't promote. You must cover the windows. No product can be visible from the outside. You can't even have an open or close sign. The signage may not imply or suggest that retail products are for sale. You're not allowed to attract customers or walk-ins. You may not post, list, or charge individual prices for products. Customers are not allowed to carry out food unless a, quote, registered club attendee, and only in an unmarked single-serving container. Again, all of these rules, there's a link below. We're not cherry-picking. These are the rules. So the clubs, first and foremost, can't be retail establishments. They can't be Herbalife signed stores, okay? The consumer cannot know it is a club until they've come inside. They can't know it has anything to do with Herbalife. So the windows are blocked. You can have no reference where somebody walking by will know it's Herbalife. Yeah. It seems like a tough, JCPenney was tough. This is... So Mr. Johnson says, a year ago or so, we want the confidence of our distributors to be the passionate expression of this product in the marketplace. The way we do that confidence, the way we build that confidence, to put our name on these jerseys, to have the world respond to us and see the Beckhams of the world, the Messis of the world with Herbalife on them, and create an opportunity around our 8 Herbalife 24 product line to build off authenticity around these athletes. So you can't put the name on the store, but they're not shy about the name. They've got 45 teams they sponsor, 86 individual athletes. But if you want to open a business, you can't even put the name on the outside of your store. So we looked at the economics of 10 nutrition clubs, and we had people sit outside, traffic trends, people coming in and out, distributor versus member traffic, what the rent was, how big they were, how often they were open, estimate the utility costs, take the startup costs, inventory costs per serving. When you do the math, you find out that kind of your average club, these are the 10 we went to in Queens, loses $12,000 a year. This doesn't seem to be a particularly good business model, and this is before paying for the person who runs the club. We've shown you this slide before, but we always find it interesting how they're tightly clustered together. The M's are McDonald's. Note they're spread as you would expect them with geographic radius restrictions. The nutrition clubs are right on top of each other. They grow kind of like a virus. In the face of these obstacles to success, how do they make money? Well, tell them it's not about shakes. It's about something they call duplication. Let's hear it from the horse's mouth. This is a Chairman's Club member. Whoops. Do we have video here?
Differently. So even right now, because guys, where your money's made is not serving smoothies. Where your money's made is having hundreds or tens or thousands of distributors around the globe.
Mr. DeSimone. By the way, thank you, John, for the interview. Because when you buy the product once a month, you have to come out of the pocket $30, $40, $50, $100. It's hard for people to afford. Again, think about the target market, 30, 40, 50 bucks. That's a lot for this market. If you could break it to a daily price point, you could have the same price per serving, but now you break it to $2, $3, $4 per day. It becomes very accessible to people. So it's not more affordable. It's more accessible. So it's not cheaper. They're just breaking it down into smaller units. Here's a presentation on how nutrition clubs work from one of the top distributors. Duplication is key. A nutrition club training is a system that's been proven to work and grow business. Do not alter anything in this process. It's a system. Rules of opening club. Even though a club can be licensed as food service establishments by attaining all the required city and state licenses and permits, they are not allowed to charge a fee for the service. The service is you get three things. You get aloe water, you get herbal tea, and you get a shake. They can, however, implement a door membership fee concept. Same as something they used to call a home club. All products consumed in a club are free. You are permitted to offer a membership or donation of $4 to help cover your product rent and operational cost. Money is made in the duplication of distributors starting their own clubs. So keep it as simple as possible. Important to remember, operators need to realize the end goal is not how many $4 services they sell each day, as that is not the way for them to achieve their financial goals. Rather, it's upgrading a consumer to become a customer and eventually a distributor, and ultimately having distributors become operators who will duplicate the nutrition club method. Again, ideal upgrading process, and again, note the duplicate again and again and again. So how does Herbalife explain nutrition clubs to Wall Street? I think it's important for somebody interested in this model to go see a club. And you'll understand that within the clubs, it's all consumption-based. So the company actually encourages you to go and take a look, Mr. DeSimone. And in light of those rules, at first I found this remarkable. In response to a survey of U.S. Nutrition Club members, nearly 60% said they attended a nutrition club every day. Almost 80% attended more than 3 days a week, and more than 40% have been attending the club for longer than 1 year. My guess is that's better than Starbucks. So how does it really work? Well, they have something called a training program. And it's an entry point for someone to kind of put up a few bucks and get started. Doesn't have the money to open a club. So you got high startup and operating costs. You're going to lose money. You have these saturated markets, and you have to try to duplicate a club. How are you going to do this? How do you recruit a low-income, inexperienced, first-time business person to try this if they're unwilling or unable to open a club? Well, that's called training. This is a training session. This is in Spanish, but the translation goes as follows. The data of 100 clubs, 64 closed in their first year. 90% of clubs that closed had less than 15 complete consumptions. 90% didn't have 15 customers, basically. 9 out of 10 clubs that were closed were attended by distributors who were not trained. So the key is training. Herbalife talks about all the time now on a conference called structured or systemized training methods, but they don't explain what they are. In Mexico, the more structured training methods that many distributors are integrating into their businesses is driving solid volume growth, duplication of clubs, Des Walsh. And frankly, this home commercial model, the method of systemized training that we're now seeing introduced by many distributor leaders in Mexico, supported obviously by the company, with nutrition club tours and so on. They've come together and gone into light commercial industrial space. They put 5 or 6 distributorships together. That's how you pool the $6,000. And they have a social environment. They have a nutrition environment. They have a training environment. They have a recruiting environment, all under one roof. Next. And there are many of these training programs. There's one called Club 100. There's one called Universidad del Éxito, Success University. They have other trainings and certifications. And now Herbalife's launched their own. It's called Best of the Best. It was launched sometime last year. Lo mejor de lo mejor. I'm not a Spanish speaker, unfortunately. So with that, I'm going to invite David Clafter and Christine Richard to join me, and we're going to talk about how this works. So by introduction, Christine can sit in the middle. Wait, oops. So Christine Richard, the way I think about this is it was kind of her idea. But to back up, I met Christine when we shorted the stock called MBIA. And December 9th, 2002, I'll never forget the day, I put out a presentation called Is MBIA AAA? And I got a call from a Dow Jones fixed income reporter named Christine Richard. And Christine followed this story more tenaciously than any other reporter, more tenaciously than any other investigator. And we got to know each other, and ultimately MBIA collapsed. Christine was inspired enough by the experience. She has a tendency, I think, to get sucked in, that she wrote a book called Confidence Game, which I highly recommend. And then she went into, after writing the book, she started working for a group called Indigo, some very small boutique research firm looking for short ideas. And it was Christine who called me in the summer of 2011 and said, Bill, I think I've got something for you to look at. I'm just starting to work on it. It's this company called Herbalife. And that was the beginning. David Clafter and I go way back. I worked in the mailroom of the White & Case, or Pascus Gordon law firm. David was an associate there. He convinced me not to be a lawyer. And since that time, I've been forever grateful. David became a partner at White & Case, and then I recruited him to join me at Gotham Partners, and then recruited him. I'm a recruiter, I guess, to Pershing Square. And David, since he started with us at the launch, took some time off, and then he came back to do this Herbalife thing for us, and you've been 100% Herbalife for the last
2 years.
2 years. Okay, so let's talk about Club 100. All of our Wall Street analysts have been into clubs throughout the U.S. and in some cases Mexico, Brazil, even Russia, and they can attest to the fact that there are more customers enjoying Herbalife products on a more frequent basis than ever before. And what the company's excited about is this is their retail model. It's a consumption model. Every day people are coming in. Very different than the old model of buying, huge inventory loading of several $1,000s and then recruiting someone else who pays $3,000 and they recruit 5 friends. That works until you run out of middle-class people. So John Hempton, he's, I think, the most bullish guy in the stock, and he wrote a blog which I really encourage you to read. The link is here, where he basically takes down the short case, fairly critical of me. And he says, look, if Ackman would stoop low enough to actually visit one of these clubs and get off his high horse and silver spoon, he'd understand. And he says they were clearly customers. They came in, they paid their money, they drank their shake, they looked like customers because they were customers. Went to a club that the company directed to him to in Queens. So with that, Christine, you're on. I'm going to click. I get to click.
Okay. So I think, in order to understand the systemized training, we looked at Club 100, which is definitely one of the biggest training programs. So it trains, recruits, motivates nutrition club operators. And we believe it really has driven Herbalife's growth in Spanish-speaking markets. It was originated in Querétaro, Mexico. It was the name and the diagram you just saw was trademarked by an Herbalife President's Team member.
A pentagon, interestingly.
The pentagon shape. His name is Jorge Ruiz. And since that time, it has been used to spread nutrition clubs across Mexico, into the U.S., across Latin America. And as we'll see, it has all its own rules, rewards, symbols. Just in doing this research, it's time-consuming in part because Club 100 is intentionally secretive. You're not going to find written explanations of how the rules work. When you do find explanations, they're inconsistent. Even steps that people we interviewed who went through the process would say very confusing, almost intended to tie you up kind of indefinitely in the process.
Actually, one point I forgot to mention, Christine left Indigo Group, set up her own firm called Orion, and we are her biggest and perhaps her only client at this point in time, because we have her dedicated just to this project.
So one of the things that is very consistent about Club 100 is it has a message for distributors, and this is an example of an undercover the undercover investigation we did. This is someone who spoke at a Club 100 training, telling people price is little when promise is clear. As my teacher used to say, the promise, what you're promising people is very important. You have to sell them on the idea that one day they're going to make it to President's Team. And President's Team, if you're not familiar with the Herbalife marketing plan, that's basically $500,000 a year for the rest of your life is how that is promoted.
And those are the top 1,000 out of about 3.9 million distributors.
Right, but here's you can see something from a presentation, objective of Plan Club 100, to get you to the President's Team. So just to give you an idea, this is where we found Club 100. I don't think we found all the instances where it is being used, but you can see it's in pretty much every major city in the U.S., and we identify President's Team members. That's likely to be, a fraction of the people who use it.
So you basically have a President's Team member in each of various locations. They oversee a downline which is comprised of these Club 100 people. So it's pervasive throughout the country. If you notice, particularly in markets with high Spanish-speaking people. You see Texas, you see Arizona, you see LA, you see New York.
So here's how you get started. And I think as we run through this process, it's very important to ask yourself the question, when Michael Johnson or John Hempton says, go to the clubs and see for yourself. You will see people consuming and paying for the product. You can't really understand what you're seeing until you understand this certification process. So here's the form, and this is what you're going to work your way through as a trainee, which is how you enter Club 100. So, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to agree to work for free in your upline sponsors club. There's basically two tracks. One is you get a yellow card, and you see the distributors in the club. Everybody's got their card, their label. One is a green card. Green card, you go a little bit more at your own pace. The yellow card it's like you've got a job. You're expected to turn up at that nutrition club pretty much every day, or about 6 days a week.
Interestingly, the green card, that's a good thing for an immigrant. The yellow card, if you play football or soccer, is a bad thing. And so the green card, go at your own pace, is kind of a good thing because you're going to take you longer. But let's keep going.
Well, they do encourage you to go for the yellow because this is like you're going to move through this process quickly. And the purpose of this process, let me back up, you may not open a nutrition club under this plan until you've gone through the process. Now, that's not what Herbalife will tell you. They'll tell you any distributor can open a club, and they've even given the appearance lately of we're imposing a cooling off period. So you have to wait. You can sign up, but it's going to be 90 days before you're allowed to open a club. We want you to have time to think about this. And you'll see they've filled in this time to think about this.
Actually, it was in yesterday's press release. It was one of the points they made that they viewed as a positive.
Okay, so here you go. You're basically entering this unpaid internship, and again, this is a distributor from Bogota, Colombia. You'll learn how to make the shakes, how to call and invite people into the club, as well as how to manage the club's finances and rules. So interestingly, the first thing you do when you turn up every day for your shift is you have to consume the product. So here's from our undercover investigation in the U.S. The trainee said he'd prefer to drink his shake, tea, and aloe water at the end of the shift. His upline said, how can we serve the tea if we haven't had the tea? So in other words, how can you go out there and serve the customers until you've been one yourself?
And paid for it.
And paid for it. You're going to go to classes. So you're going to go to classes, eight of these classes. You're going to pay for the classes. In the U.S., they seem to be 2 or 3 times a week. In Mexico, it was 5 days a week. The content of the classes is very repetitive. And they have an interesting rule. If you arrive just 1 minute late, you're not going to get credit for the class. You're expected to stay, but you won't get credit. You won't get a stamp on that form, and you'll have to, come to another one and pay. And this is sort of the beginning of, you'll see a treadmill that people get on that just keeps them almost as perpetual consumers of these clubs. So here's a training, and one of the things that a lot of trainers will do is serve up the shakes, and that's included in the cost of your training. So this is Chile, I believe, hundreds of shakes. Somebody in the upline is selling to people in their downline as part of their so-called certification. Again, you know, it's confusing. It was confusing for us to untangle it, and it's confusing for people who get involved in it. So here's from undercover work in the U.S. A trainee at a club was asked by another trainee how many more classes she needed to complete to get her certification. And she said she didn't know because as soon as she completes one series of trainings, she's on to another one. So, and at these classes, and you see here on this form, you're going to need to get 3 additional stamps. At these classes, you're going to be expected to stand up and give a testimonial about the product. So it's a given that you're taking the product and a lot of it, and that you have a really good story to tell to other people who come to the class. I think we saw this on the 2020, the Nightline segment, where you saw people getting up one after the other and saying, this cured cancer, you know, this cured my diabetes. This is built into the requirement for people to move through the process. So your upline is sitting in the audience, he's going to give you a stamp or not, so you should have a good story, and you're told to have a good and have an improving story. So now you're back at the club and you have some specific tasks that you need to move through. Week number 1, you're going to go on tours of other people's clubs. So here you're going to go visit other clubs, and you're going to have them mark down how much you consume, what club you visited, and someone's going to stamp off that you went, that you paid and consumed.
It's going to be signed by your host. Who's your
host?
Right,
by the host, the person.
The upline?
Someone who joined this scheme earlier than you is further along in the certification. Okay, so touring. Again, this is from research in Columbia. Distributors during the certification process have to visit your club on the tour, and they would have to pay for their consumption for training. That's the host's benefit of teaching you from their experience. And you'll notice that the word, if you start substituting the word recruiting for teaching, I think you start to understand what this system really is.
We're still in week 1.
Still in week 1. This is from Venezuela. These are the rules for when you go on tours. And I think it's just interesting. I mean, you can see you're expected to go to a certain kind of club, and we'll get to that. You're supposed to call ahead and let your host know when you're coming, no cameras, and don't talk to anybody in the club. You know, which seems to be a way to say, you know, you just want to sit there and look like a customer.
Mr. Hempton probably didn't engage with these people.
Right. I mean, just think of all these levels or different types of people who now look like consumers. And certainly when we went around and did research, my initial expectation is that we would find empty clubs, and we did find a lot of empty clubs, but then we would find these clubs that were filled with people. And I have to say, it felt not like this feeling of community and you know, this happy environment. I felt like people were coming in almost as part of an assignment. And I think we see what the assignment is.
If you go to Hempton's blog, he said he went to a club, there was no one there, but then 45 minutes or so, all of a sudden a bunch of people showed up all at once. So what are we doing here?
All right, so now we're on you have to learn how to make a shake. This is a key part of your training. And you'll see, you know, you have to do this a certain number of days. Place to record the number of shakes you make. Now you'll notice they're called school clubs. Some of these nutrition clubs get designated as schools. And then you see your host signs off. It's advanced. Because you would think, well, you know, making a shake is not a difficult process. It's 2 scoops of Formula 1 in water. But from the undercover investigation, what we were told is you're going to need to make 100 shakes in order to get this process down. Go ahead. And it's not that you're just making the shakes, as this distributor from Colombia explains. Of course, you and your relatives have to pay the host for the meals or shakes that you guys take in the school club. So you say to yourself, okay, I need to make 100 shakes to get my stamp. Now not only do I need to make them, I need to find somebody to come into the club and pay me to make these for them. So people, of course, call on their family and friends and say, I'm trying to pass this test. You heard about this opportunity. I can make $500,000. help me get through this. Help me start this process.
Help me and I'll help you.
Right. You'll probably want to join if this works out for me. And here we see, again, this is from undercover research in the U.S. The undercover asked a trainee who had been working at the club for 2 years if it takes a long time to learn how to make the shakes, and she said, nah. Later, the undercover asked the trainee if she had completed the certification process, and she said she still needs to pass some of the tests.
Even though they're called weeks.
Right. She's 2 years into the process, and she can't pass the test. So now the 2 more steps here, just go through them quickly. One is giving out information. Again, people are checking that you do it.
If anyone here has been accosted by an Herbalife distributor, they hand you a flyer,
which
of course is
against
the rules, isn't it? You're not allowed to promote your club, you're not allowed to advertise, but that's okay, keep going.
So, okay, there's giving out information.
How many people did you hand forms to, right?
Right, how many people, yep, and then you'll see inviting is next.
Click, yes.
And here you're working on behalf of your sponsor.
Right, you are at your sponsor's club, so you're bringing people into his club. So now we're to inviting. These, I think of these as somewhat running together. So again, how many invitations did you hand out? How many people actually decided to come in when you gave out an invitation? And then here's the catch again. So a trainee in the club asked another trainee if she'd completed the test, shake making, inviting, giving out information. Haven't you done that already, he asked? And the trainee said she had, but the invitees needed to consume the product for her to pass the test. So call it inviting, call it giving out information, call it making a shake. You're finding people to pay for shakes. That's what this whole process is about. This is an example, and I just note that it's a free sample that this person is offering you, so it's probably likely that inviting, you probably get your family and friends to help you, but if you do find people to come, you're offering this for free, so you're going to pay for that as the trainee. Another requirement is before you end this process, you're going to leave 10 retained members at your uplines club. So you're going to...
What does that mean?
Retained member, it's somebody who's regularly attending the club. And again, you know, for a few days, for a few months, a regular attendee. And here we see from this is a distributor in Venezuela. A distributor mentioned that during her certification, she spent almost 3 months trying to complete the retention requirement. You know, trying to get 10 people from her circle of family and friends to regularly consume in the club. So if you think about this, the stereotype of the Herbalife distributor in the U.S. is the person who badgers their family members to join up, maybe become a supervisor. At this level, where people have less money, they're badgering them for $5.
Right, so this is, if you think about this, Herbalife, the main program was for middle-class people. This is a mini Herbalife pyramid within the pyramid, breaking it down, breaking the product down into $4 or $5 purchases, and the recruitment now is, can I get someone to spend $5? But the methodology is the same psychological, behavioral, economic factors at work. You get someone with a very small ticket. In the case of big Herbalife, you spend $60 to become a distributor, and then they gradually work you up to spending $3,000. Here they take probably a bigger percentage of your income, the $4 or $5, and you start having a sunk cost issue. You know, a lot of particularly financially unsophisticated people don't think about sunk costs. So they're like, well, I've been working on this for a while. I've spent all this time and energy. I'm now invested. I'm getting closer. I'm filling the form out. I'm almost done filling out the form, and it creates this tendency to want to stay because you're almost just going to make it, or that's how you think. Particularly when you hear these aspirational stories.
The company calls it engagement.
Engagement.
That's the term they use now.
From Mexico, and this is from a training run by a president's team member named Esther Espinoza, and she and her husband founded Club 100. So she tells people they should actually feel grateful to be leaving their family and friends with this club. That club opened the door for you. Imagine how great it is. So you have to start working, inviting people to go in, and when you get 10 people into the club, it means you're no longer afraid of anything. Just a note on this, I mean, if you're going to find 10 people from your circle who are willing to regularly come into this club, and then you agree to leave them with the club, you've pretty much tapped out your circle. And so now you go open a club, you're in the position now of having to bring on trainees, who have an untapped circle of family and friends. And we sort of talk about this, it's like the human chain letter, you know, that you gotta, okay, you got your payback, and now it's time, you know, you gotta go find people to bring their family members, you know. So this is in answer to John Hempton's question. So are the consumers really consumers? Let's look at who they are. Distributors training in their sponsors club, distributors going on certification tours. And here's a big and I think interesting group, family and friends of people working in clubs. So when Herbalife says the vast majority of the people tell us, I've consumed Herbalife products within the last year, but I'm not a distributor. Well, are you someone trying to help a distributor move through the process? Because I'm not sure I would call that a retail sale when it's a ticket price. It's a price of admission you're paying for somebody that you're trying to help. Finally, there's another group that you might see in the club, and these are potential recruits that go on presentation tours. So if you've paid enough into the system, you're allowed to take around new recruits and show them successful clubs. So you can imagine this guy here is able to take people to clubs, and it's filled with customers. So why wouldn't his potential recruits want to join a business that looks like this?
So if you look at the great frauds of all time, Enron had that phantom trading floor, you know, where they had put a bunch of people in seats and computers when they were taking the banks around to look at a financing. You see this in, I forgot the name of the company, Micro Warehouse, one of these. They had a phantom warehouse where they shipped goods. And what Herbalife has is it has phantom or fictitious customers. And that when they take people on demonstration tours, Wall Street people, and they go and sit in a club, you know, the clubs aren't particularly attractive, the windows are covered and everything, but people show up and they're consuming. And one of the people who worked on this for us at the very beginning went to a nutrition club. By the way, the people running these clubs could not be nicer, more sort of ambitious. You know, I'm building a business, I'm getting closer. And Marius, who worked on this assignment for us before he left Pershing, said, you know, I was just sort of sitting there and she was incredibly nice to me and she gave me a free shake. And so it's a tragedy, right? They don't realize that they're being defrauded. You know, they think, you know, when you're, you know, why do you come to America? You come to America to pursue the American dream. What is the American dream? The American dream is to be an entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur, you know, one of the ways entrepreneurs get started is they open a Korean grocer. But what if you don't have enough money to open up a Korean grocer? And what if, by the way, Korean grocers are successful because one Korean grocer helps the next. Here you have the equivalent with a much lower ticket price, and this is what Latino people are doing. And they see these Latino distributors put on stage at these extravaganzas, and they have pins with diamonds on them, and they're millionaires, and they have videos, and that's the American dream. So they're selling the American dream to these people. Oh, sorry, get back one.
That's okay. We're on to the last requirement to fill out this form. So if you click one more. And this is, you basically go and help out at a graduation ceremony. And these are held, a team, you know, these groups, this business is done in groups. And the group will get together, you know, of course they're attending classes. So this concentration starts to make sense when you start to think about classes and tours. Yeah, actually, you want your club to be surrounded by others. It's convenient. You're part of, it's described as a group activity, which is very odd when you think about a direct sales business. Who wants to be clustered in a group of competitors and furthermore teaching your competitors how to do the business? But this is how it works. And so the final step, you help out at a graduation. It's usually held at a hotel. It's a big kind of red carpet event.
Actually, I want to make another point here, which I think is important. You said the distributors pay for
the distributors, right, pay for the ticket.
The aspiring members. First of all, this is a graduation. Many of these people are uneducated. You know, this is the first time that they've graduated from anything. They've worked really hard. They spent a lot of money. They've recruited a lot of family and friends. Herbalife put out a press release a couple days ago, and again, they did one last night. I encourage you to read them. We're going to give you copies of them so you can read them when you leave this meeting. And they talk about that feeling. The way they describe it, it's about nutrition and wellness, and they give us some statistics from the University of Pennsylvania that 166 people working together, you know, had a higher probability of losing weight. But they're not selling weight loss in these clubs. They're selling a business opportunity, and you have a higher probability of sticking with it if you see other people doing it alongside you. So this is...
So you're done. You can see this person has managed to get 10 people going to their uplines club. They've been able to get through all the requirements, no doubt with a lot of help from family and friends.
And this is a major accomplishment. This is not an easy thing to do. You've worked at this for months, sometimes years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and there's an interesting number here when we thought about this. Right, so now you're done. You've completed all these tasks. So what has it cost you? And not just you, but your family and friends. And we estimated about $3,000. You know, we figured a shake L-O-N-T is $5. And then we just started looking. Okay, you're consuming twice a day in your uplines club. You know, you're consuming at events. You've done the 100 shake making practice.
By the way, I find it interesting the people who choose to leave. I wonder if they're distributors. But keep going, Christine.
So we got to $3,220, which interestingly is just about what a supervisor order is. And yet you spread this among a bunch of people. It wasn't just one person. Nobody needed a credit card. It was paid out of pocket, $5 a day.
Excluding the cost of classes.
Right, and classes add more just to the...
This is a brilliant way. By the way, this is ingenious, okay? But it's a brilliant way to break down that $3,000 supervisor buy-in to a ticket price that an undocumented Latino can afford that has no education, no financial experience. And it's done in a way where it's perfectly designed to meet the behavioral factors that drive economic behavior.
And when you try to look at it from the outside, it doesn't look like what it is. You know, it looks like, as John Hempton said, they look like consumers because they are. And that's, I think, that...
They're consumers of the American dream.
Right, that's what they actually are. But you know, if you go there and you look, it is, I think your first reaction is, wow, I don't quite get why this would work, but it does work. It is working. So here we see people with their graduation caps, their certificates. They're now allowed to open a club.
Who's the guy with the thumb up?
I don't know, but I suspect a president's team member. So now you advance through this system.
Can you explain this chart?
So you can see on the green box on the left that just indicates you have a club. It's sort of, there's no number in there. You start out with no daily consumers. Your goal is to get to 25 daily consumers, 50, 75, 100, hence Club 100. And then up the other side, you're going to be adding clubs. So as you bring people on,
so the left side is one club getting to 100 customers, and the right side is adding clubs beneath you.
Right, in your downline. Okay, so here's this is Edgar Balbus. He's a Chairman's Club member, fairly recent from.
And Chairman's Club are the top 50 distributors out of 3.6 million. We have the link to the full hour and 12-minute video. Encourage those who speak Spanish to watch it, but go ahead.
Yeah, and he's quite recent, so I think about 2013, and it's always worth, I think, looking at who the recent Chairman's Club members are, because that tells you where the action is in Herbalife. I mean, there are about 50 Chairman's Club members, but a lot of them, you know, they joined back in the 80s or the 90s, so they were in early. So this, I think it's important. You'll see how many Chairman's Club members are involved, not just with Club 100, but with other certification programs. So he tells you, they're quite coy, they're secretive, and he's telling people in this training video, when you get to 25 consumers at your club, we begin talking about other interesting things. As we said during our tour, or as they told us during our tour, I'll tell you when you get to 25 and more. So just do what you're doing now, and when you get to 25 and more, we'll let you in on some of the secrets.
Again, this is also the psychological stuff. You've got this surprise coming. Other people have made it through. It's like pledging a fraternity, okay? And you've got something coming, but we're not going to tell you until you have to meet the certification.
So here's the 25 consumer certificate. Here's, you're going to very faithfully fill out all the consumers who come to your club every day, how much they consume. Back to Edgar Balbus, he's telling us, you know, just want to clarify that these are not, you know, consumers, but how many consumptions your club has. Because if someone went and consumed 2 or even 3 times that day in your nutrition club, that should be registered as 3. So if you've got helpful friends and family members and they're willing to come 3 times a day, you know, you're going to move toward 25. Of course, you're consuming and your consumptions count. And people who run nutrition clubs are encouraged to do double consumption because, you know, you want a product of the product. So you start to see where these 25 consumers come from.
By the way, all these canisters are being opened and food is being served, so there's no product to return unopened and get your money back. Let's keep going.
You know, finally, what he clarifies, these aren't really consumers. This is about consumption, and actually it's about how much product you order from Herbalife.
I think it's worth reading the quote. Now you see
the bottom line.
The objective we want to achieve is that a club with 25 daily consumers moves, not 1,200 points, moves means sells, the amount of volume required to serve 25 people for 30 days, but 2,500 points. That means there's still 1,300 to go. Those 1,300 points, my friends, are achieved with products, by selling closed products for specific nutrition. So they encourage you to buy more than what you can sell to the 25. This is the inventory loading part. And now you're getting closer, right? So now you scrape together the money to write the check to buy the extra inventory.
And then you find out the secret. So why do I want to be a 25 club, other than the fact I get a certificate to hang on my wall? Well, this is what we're told in Colombia. Once you've reached 25 meals, you can become a daily school club. Then others will go to yours and learn and pay for their consumption. So again, replace school with recruiting, replace teacher with recruiter. And I think this is how they hide it. But once you engage in enough inventory loading to get that certificate, now the system is going to feed you trainees, you know, paid consumers, sort of conscripted consumers. Okay, so the rewards continue to build. At 50, you get to train people out of your club. So we were told by this one distributor, she had recruited someone, but they weren't going to train in her club. And she said, well, that's because I haven't reached 50 and more. So I have to kind of pass them along to my upline because she's at 50 and more. So think about how much when you bring someone on as a trainee, they're doing the shake-making test, they're doing the inviting test. They're going to generate a lot of volume for your club. So it's worth moving from 25 to 50, but now you've got to order 5,000
And they're free labor.
Free labor.
Yeah, everyone's working without pay in violation of the labor laws.
All right, so going up the other side of the pyramid, you know, how are you going to, you know, get these additional clubs working underneath you? And we'll see the next slide. This is sort of the vision of where you're headed. You've got a 100 consumer club. You've recruited some people who've set up 75 clubs. They've recruited 50 clubs. They've recruited 25. So you're now at like 657,000 in income.
And this is a two-dimensional representation of a five-sided pyramid. If you were to render that in 3D, it would be a pyramid.
So basically, you recruit 5 people who can spend $5, and each of them recruit 5 people who can spend $5, and each of them recruit 5 people who can spend $5, and you get to do it on a regular basis, and you can build a real business and make a lot of money.
And this has a special name. It's called the engargolado, which means the binding.
This is the record-keeping system.
Right, it's the elaborate record-keeping system. Everything from how many people I gave out invitations to how many people came in. Just a quote here from Edgar Balbus. In all honesty, the first time I heard the name, I didn't like it. I said, I'm going to call it controller, but then I said, you know what? I'm going to call it binding, which is apt. I mean, it really does bind people to this process. And as you remember, one of the explanations for what you would learn about is how to manage your finances, and this is part of the engargolado. So you're going to separate your money into red and green envelopes. What is the red envelope? The red envelope, my friend, cannot be touched because this is the cost and the money is not yours. That money goes to Herbalife, it belongs to your business, and it has to be used, obviously, for product reposition.
That means replacing stuff you've sold.
Right. So the green envelope, this is described as sort of take-home pay, but with a catch. So you place that amount in your green envelope. That's what's left over after you fill the red, and that's your salary. You take that $16, that's his example, just as if you'd go to work someplace for someone else. What do you do with the green envelope? That's your salary. You pay for electricity. You start saving to pay for electricity. You pay for water, your phone, your club, everything. And if we click through to the next one, you'll see the problem with this.
This is money for your operating expenses.
Right. The catch is the green envelope is represented as part of your profits. It feeds into another number on the forms, but you just don't acknowledge the expenses, which is a problem with Herbalife generally. You know, they never offer up information about how much it actually costs to be a distributor. But as Balbus explains, very important, you're going to take this number and you're going to put it under clear plastic. And that's super important because that is like clear. Because in the end, here is the monthly summary of earnings. The fact that it's see-through turns it into a very effective recruiting tool once your club becomes successful.
So it's a clear cover, it's your earnings, but in fact, it's your revenues before any of your expenses.
So here you see, you know, here's the proof, and this is how you're going to advance up the other side of the pyramid. You're going to convince more people to open clubs. So you have a copy of this sitting casually on the desk in your nutrition club, and if people want to see, oh, in January you made $6,606. Now in March, oh, look, you're up to $10,099. So this is also shown at the classes that people go to every week. It's mandatory. When you're a trainee, you just talk about the product. Once you're a club operator, you have a product testimonial, and you hold up this and show people how you're advancing. And just wanted to point out, you know, I think we've touched on it, that this just becomes kind of a treadmill, and you being qualified once is not enough. You have to constantly requalify. So for, you know, if you don't requalify, you'll get taken off the tour list, so nobody's going to come and visit your club. You're not going to be able to take potential recruits around to the classes or show them the clubs that are bustling with consumers. So in other words, if you don't play by the requalification game, you're going to lose access to Club 100's deceptive marketing, recruiting techniques.
And think about it, as you're making your way up, the last thing you want to do is fall back down again. I think the psychology of this is very powerful.
So the key thing to requalify requires you to take 10% out of the green envelope. Remember, this is the one that you're already depleting with all those expenses. And you're going to move it every week into the red envelope. And this is because you're going to purchase more products with it to requalify. So Balbus explains specifically here from the green envelope, from your profit, you're going to take 10% and you're going to put it in here, increase. What for? Because what we want to achieve with this is that your inventory, independently of what you start with, if it was 500 or 1,000 points.
Points are volume points, which are a measure of dollar purchases of inventory in Herbalife.
So with that, my friends, you can get to what we saw in those nutrition clubs with weekly inventories of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 volume points with this principle of 10%.
By the way, this is not some random person who's explaining this on the internet. This is one of the top 50 Chairman's Club members at Herbalife. He became a Chairman's Club member in 2013.
So over time, I mean, you can imagine the red envelope will grow. If you follow the rules, you buy more product every single week. The green envelope, you know, who knows what's in it, but it's being used to promote the
being used to buy more inventory from Herbalife.
Right, the constant 10%.
And at 10% per month, you know, the red envelope, if there were enough money, grows pretty quickly.
So it's interesting to look at, and we did do a lot of our research on Facebook as well as, you know, going to clubs. And, you know, people are very proud of their nutrition clubs and their participation in clubs. And, you know, it's just, it's an interesting place to look and see, you know, how people feel about them, what they do in clubs. And Club 100, you see constant promotions. You know, distributors hold their birthday parties there, give away things for Mother's Day, product raffles, free facials. And then I think my favorite was 3 hours of free babysitting with the purchase of a shake. And if you, one more, you know, okay, summer camp for kids, 5 to 8, bring your kids free with their kids' shake. So how do you move shakes? You know, these kids are, these are customers.
Basically,
They're paying for shakes.
It's $1.65 an hour for babysitting in the form of a shake that a distributor has to pay for. This is all free labor. This is totally illegal under the labor laws.
All right, so, you know, as long as, you can see how as long as you keep growing your order by 10%, faithfully putting the money, if it's a promotion, by the way, they're very clear that distributors have to cover promotions, so you're going to keep putting money in the red envelope and make sure that can replace all your product plus 10%. Your earnings are going to keep growing on the surface under the clear sheet.
You know, John Hempton on his blog even said he expects that the people running the clubs are not covering rent. So there's people coming through, but the person running the club is losing money.
And sort of feeling like, well, this is okay because these people really just want to have a nice space in their community where, you know, I think it's naive about what people are expecting from this. They're expecting a lot. They've been promised a lot, you know, and they've been promised a lot by some pretty credible people.
Well, like the CEO of a New York Stock Exchange listed company.
Right. I mean, they're trusting this is going to get them to a place of financial security, which we'll hear about in a second. But I think it's interesting also, again, Facebook, club operators almost advertise the status of their club with product, empty containers. I mean, it's not like, look at all the customers. It's like, look at what we're consuming and what we've run through. It's like an advertisement. Here's another one. Container out of Thrones.
You don't see this at Starbucks.
No, like what retail establishment proves how popular it is by leaving the empties around the...
By using up all the space with the...
Right. Okay. So now we have a video. This is, it's a lot of undercover audio that we took at various Club 100 clubs. And I think it'll give you a sense of what people actually expect.
And this is just a sample. Okay. Oh.
Yo decidí hacer esto porque yo tenía 10 años trabajando en ese restaurante. 10 años trabajando en ese restaurante y no veía más, no veía qué más podía hacer ahí. Pues yo quería algo mejor creo que todos queremos algo mejor, pero no sabemos cómo.
¿Cuánto tiempo tienes en este país? Tienes 10 años, 15 años, 20 años. Van a pasar otros 15, otros 10, otros 20 años y vas a seguir donde mismo. Porque si en 5 o 10 años no has logrado lo que tú esperabas de este país, ya no lo vas a lograr, porque uno va... Se te va a enseñar a ti para que tengas una tranquilidad económica. ¿Qué es tranquilidad económica? Bueno, quizás en estos momentos tú te vas a dormir y no te puedes dormir porque estás con la congoja de que no has pagado el bill del carro. Estás con la congoja de que ya viene la renta y no la completas. Es la congoja de que tus niños necesitan zapatos y no puedes comprarles.
¿Verdad? ¿Y qué les quiero decir? Si un taquero puede, todos pueden, ¿verdad? Porque yo antes de esto no sabía nada, yo sabía de tortas, quesadillas y enchiladas, y así realmente vendemos muchos, ¿verdad? Pero gracias a que si tú te das la oportunidad y entiendes el valor del curso de certificación, créeme mi amigo, tú la vas a hacer en esta actividad. Muchas gracias.
Vamos a ir paso a pasito de tal forma que no hay manera de que si tú te aplicas, vienes a las clases, estás en tus rondas, haces todo lo que te dice tu patrocinador, esto va a suceder contigo.
Entonces, para ustedes la tarea es, busquen un club que sea exitoso y tenga mucha gente, y vayan de una semana a hacer derecho. En otras palabras, hagan escuela de cine.
te gradúas, ya te damos un diploma de que tú eres experto en todas esas áreas que nosotros tenemos. Requisitos, porque todo tiene que tener requisitos. Si tú vas a la escuela, ¿hay requisitos? Sí, claro que sí hay requisitos.
No abran hasta que usted se haya ido a trabajar en el club de su patrocinador y haya dejado en el club de su patrocinador al menos 10 personas en una lista. Entonces usted puede declararse experto.
¿Y saben qué? Yo no espero que el 100% de los que se inscriben como amarillas se gradúen como amarillas. No lo espero porque es irreal. Esto es un curso exigente. Las cosas que valen la pena en la vida, poca gente las consigue.
¿Por qué es importante que tú te certifiques? ¿Por qué es importante el curso de certificación? ¿Por qué es importante que todos estén en el curso de certificación? Número uno, porque vamos a garantizar que le vas a enseñar bien a otra persona. Vamos a garantizar que tú estés haciendo las cosas bien. Cuando tú te certificas, si no te certificas, oh cielos, vas a ser uno de los más del montón, ¿verdad?
Y hacer una carrera es para que, en lugar de que tú le dejes una deuda, le dejes un ingreso a ellos para que ellos sigan estudiando, y no solamente para tus hijos, sino para tus nietos y tus bisnietos. Una vez que ellos van pasando a la siguiente vida, va pasando. Entonces, ¿en qué compañía pueden trabajar en 3 generaciones? Más que solamente en Herbalife.
Imagínese qué haría usted con $22,000 mensuales mes por mes. ¿Verdad que no tendría preocupación por la renta? ¿Por los biles? ¿Por el carro? ¿Por nada? Entonces, nosotros los presidentes que estamos hoy en día aquí en esta sala, somos testimonio. Somos testigos de que lo que estamos compartiendo con ustedes aquí es una realidad. O sea que no estamos vendiendo espejitos, no te estamos diciendo...
So we think what they are selling is smoke and mirrors in the form of these certificates. And, I think it's pretty obvious what is wrong with Club 100, but clearly it's relying on deceptive income claims. Trainees are convinced to invest in an education, this idea that they're investing in an education with a valuable payoff. It demands clearly excessive duplication, takes this fake club traffic and, turns it into consumers, promotes inventory loading, and, most likely violates minimum wage rules.
So here are what's wrong with the false income claims. Trainees are routinely told they're going to make the president's team or higher. President's team, when Herbalife last disclosed it, earned over $500,000 a year. If you follow the pentagonal growth progress that they show on the chart at the bottom right, you're going to earn $657,000 a year. And with Herbalife, you can pay the rent, buy shoes for your children, and leave money to your grandchildren. And what you notice here is we have shown other materials in other presentations where someone like Doran Andry, who's in the Chairman's Club, has put up a spreadsheet where he projects that if you start with one club today, you can get to 27,000 clubs in 10 years. You'll generate $4 billion of income, and you'll keep 171 million of net income, and we have those in other presentations. For this audience, the targets are totally unrealistic, but they're lower. So a president's team will make $500,000, and in the interim, you'll buy your kids shoes. But according to Club 100, 9 out of 10 clubs that were closed were attended by people who had not been trained. So you're told what you need to do is start training. And you'll notice there's a 5x5 quality about all the graphics. The club trademark itself is a pentagon with stars around it. And this larger graphic is 5x5x5. You'll often see written out in numerals 5x5. And the ladder with the different colored boxes is 5 on one side and 5 on the other side. And it leads, in fact, to the, we think that's the chairman's club pin, which is the top 50 people out of almost 4 million.
And again, it's climbing the ladder. All right, this is the American dream.
There's no specific warnings or disclosures for training. They don't tell you what it's going to cost, how long it's going to actually take. They show you that it should take 4 weeks, but it generally takes much longer. They don't show you the capital that's going to be required if you choose to open your own club. They don't, as they do in the general market where they don't track retail sales, they don't tell you what the retail sales are likely to be at a club. They don't tell you net profits or losses. John Hempton said he assumes people are losing money, or I think he said minimum wage is the upside. They don't tell you the churn rate. How many people don't actually make it through the training program? And of those who do, how long do they remain in the system? They don't tell you how many trainees actually become sales leaders. To become a sales leader, you have to place that $3,000 order. For many of these victims, that's totally out of anything they could consider. And then just simply, does anyone make money? Does anyone actually find a career here? You won't find disclosure on that. This is a Club 100, Universidad del Éxito. That's another related form of this training. I think if you click again, you'll see at the top, they present this as a university. So they themselves use a pyramidal structure, and they tell you you're getting a university degree. This is from an English language version of Success University. Here's your graduation certificate. And notice, Herbalife says you can't put their name and logo on your club. But here it is on your graduation certificate. Same color, same font.
By the way, these are people that have never graduated from anything. If you look at those pictures, I was just, every time I look at this, it's just a tragedy, right? You see these people worked really hard, and they've actually achieved something remarkable, which is they've gotten through this program. And unfortunately, they don't realize that they've been defrauded. As you might imagine, you can't use the word university if you're not a university. And here we've quoted a number of the state laws that apply. There's also laws about licensing teachers and administrators, school advertising, certification of agents who sell or enroll school services, the student refunds. And then there's general prohibitions on unfair and deceptive practices. There was a story yesterday in the newspaper that one of the for-profit education schools is being investigated by the New York AG for false advertising. And here they tell you, this is a school where you're going to learn how to open your club, grow your club, and duplicate. That is an invitation to join a geometric pyramid. Herbalife itself, about a year ago, put out an advisory because it addresses labor law issues. Because we've been digging around, is the answer.
And I would just ask you, what in this population that they are targeting, will these people understand what are their federal obligations? The company simply puts it out there and says, you have to figure it out. Let's look at the next slide, please. First, the standards adopted by the court. They're referring to a court case that the trainees and club operators are somehow supposed to read and understand. As we believe they might be applied to a training and a nutrition club, all 6 of which have to be met, or the trainee will be regarded as the employee. First, the training, even though it includes training as to the operation of a club, is similar to training which would be given in an educational environment. An example, create tools like scorecards or rating sheets to grade your trainees during training. They're advising them how to skirt this requirement. 2, training experience is for the exclusive benefit of the trainee. We've already seen that the trainees are being forced to make shakes and to go out and hand out flyers to hawk the services of the sponsors club. For example, if a trainee brings a new customer, they should receive a portion of the membership fee and continue to work with the customer. If the customer decides down the road to become a distributor, the nutrition club operator refers him or her to the person who invited them. Number 3, the trainee does not displace regular employees and works under close supervision of the trainer. For example, the trainee is never in the club by himself or herself. We have had undercover people who have been cleaning toilets and cleaning shakes and cleaning up tables. The nutrition club operator derives no immediate advantage from the activities of the trainee, and on occasion its operations may actually be impaired. For example, the trainee is training for a limited time doing an activity for the purpose of learning how to be proficient in that activity, for example, making shakes. The trainee spends no more than 2 hours in total learning how to make shakes using different flavors. The company is obviously very sensitive about this because what we have found is that people are making hundreds of shakes and they often get stuck in that portion of the training until they perfect the techniques for weeks or months. The trainee understands that no employment is promised after the completion of the training. Well, it may not be precisely W-2 employment, but they're promised a job. The trainee and the trainer understand that the trainee is not entitled to wages for the time spent in training. I suppose that one's true, right? Herbalife knows all about nutrition clubs and training programs. This is the standard language from their 10Ks and 10Qs, where they say that they essentially monitor and, quote, globalize what they think
I like
is the best
reading these
practices.
things. So new ideas and distributor methods of operation or daily methods. Is it distributor or daily methods?
Distributor.
Distributor. Being generated in many of our markets and are globalized, where applicable, through the combined efforts of members, country management, or regional and corporate management. Management strategy is to review the applicability of expanding successful country initiatives throughout a region, where appropriate, financially support the globalization of these initiatives. First quarter 10Q.
This is an article reporting on an interview with President Des Walsh in early of 2012. And they said he's looking for what's working. Walsh wanted to get inside the heads of his successful distributors and figure out what it was they were doing so well. If we find out based on that it is an idea that can spread across cultures, across markets, we look to do that. And in fact, training programs have been globalized with the support of Herbalife. Now, Herbalife recently put in place a 90-day waiting period, which, as Christine said,
this is part of the Build It Better,
Building It Better
gold standard approach.
A kind of cooling off period. But in fact, they use this to tell people they need training. Any participant desiring to use a Nutrition Club DMO will be required to complete formal company training program. This is in addition to the already implemented 90-day waiting period prior to opening a club. And I don't know if we have a video on this.
I think we do. Go back. Go back. Is there video here? This is the training program.
Welcome to the Nutrition Club Operators Training Course. If you already operate an Herbalife Nutrition Club, or if you're thinking about opening a nutrition club, it's necessary that you understand some important rules that will help protect and set the stage for you to grow your business. The objectives of this course are to introduce nutrition clubs and their purpose, discuss the registration process, explain the nutrition club rules and why they are important. Finally, we'll talk about some sound business practices. In addition to these topics, there will be activities, videos, and a quiz at the end of this course. You must pass the quiz with a score of 80% or better to receive a certificate of completion that you can display on a wall inside your nutrition club. Don't worry, you can take the quiz as many times as you need to pass. This course should take approximately 30 minutes to complete, so let's get started.
30 minutes.
So the company's formal training program is 30 minutes with a quiz that you can take over and over until you get 80% correct.
That's a new initiative as part of the Build It Better program.
Herbalife has supported Club 100 at its extravaganza in 2012. It was handing out that two-sided ladder leading to the chairman's club. Poster, sorry. In 2012, an analyst touted Club 100, that's Spanish for Club 100, as a best practices program that could add a few percentage points to Herbalife's U.S. growth in the near term. Clearly, this came from management.
The fruits of Club 100 should become increasingly apparent over the next few quarters. This best practices program targeted toward the U.S. Latino market, 65% of U.S. sales, originated in Mexico in 2011. It's been a key enabler of that market's growth in recent quarters, 17% year to date. 10 years after the club concept was born. While hard to quantify, we surmise it could add a few percentage points to U.S. growth in the near term. Next.
Oh, in the January 2013 Investor Day, which was in response to our original presentation, Herbalife put up a video.
So if you go back and read the transcript of that day, they're saying, look, Pershing Square describes these clubs as down and out places. You know what, it's just a class issue. Mr. Ackman just doesn't understand this community. Let us show you how much fun they're having.
So we went and looked in closer detail at the clubs that appeared in those videos, and what we found is that many of them are using Club 100 as their recruiting and training.
Go back. Let's play the video.
Hola, buenos días, bienvenidos. Yo les voy a mostrar mi club de nutrición. Este es mi club de nutrición. Vénganse por acá, que pasen un ratico para que conozcan a toda la gente y cómo estamos aquí trabajando el día de hoy. Este es mi club de nutrición. Estamos ya aquí 5 años, vamos a cumplir en este año y estamos muy contentos.
It's Christopher Otero. You know, we're over here in Bosque Farms, New Mexico, and I'm here to show you guys my nutritional club. See, like, this is the consumers. See, everybody wave hi, say good morning. Morning!
Estoy localizado en la ciudad de Miami Gardens. Acá en este club atiendo más de 100 personas todos.
My name is Deborah Souza. Welcome to my nutrition club in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. I welcome about 10 to 15 people that they come to have their LOT and shake.
My name is Nancy Lyons, and I want to welcome you to our nutritional club here in Los Lunas, New Mexico. This right here is our nutritional club. These are our clients that we feed every single day.
I'm helping over 45 people here in our club every day.
Next. So this one I'm going to cover. So on July 18th, the company organized a demonstration in Chicago against me personally, and they quoted a woman named Sylvia Muir. Members like me are under attack by a billionaire hedge fund manager who has embarked on an unprecedented effort to take down my way of life. We want him to know that Herbalife members won't stand for it. Unfortunately, her way of life is promoting Club 100. Earlier in the month, Herbalife sent distributors to D.C. to meet with congressmen and senators, and they held a press conference. And these are the people who were there, and these are the club programs that they are promoting. And of course, the people they take to D.C., you know, in a pyramid, there are always some successful people, obviously the people at the top. They don't take the people who've been defrauded, have known they've been defrauded. They take the people who are making money, people at the top of the pyramid.
They're running the training clubs. These are the teachers of the teachers, or the recruit, you know, at the top.
One of the famous Herbalife sayings is teach others to teach.
Right, read, recruit.
Okay, so we've been onto this, and Herbalife might know that we've been onto this, so they've made some efforts to hide it. One way they've done that is actually when you open a nutrition club, you're required to apply to Herbalife for doing so. And if you notice, you have to check whether it's a traditional club, a central club, multi-club, or something called Club 100. You have to check the box. But the new version of the form for this year, they don't mention Club 100. It's gone. The Plan Club 100 website.
That's from the founder.
That's from the founder. That's also gone, disappeared in December. And, but it lives on. This is new trainees learning. So, again, they're trying to hide it. This is our Edgar Balbus, who helped us understand this concept. And, of course, Herbalife takes their most successful Chairman Club members and have them speak at these extravaganzas to let people get excited about the potential success. And then Herbalife, because they need Club 100, maybe you're not entirely clear why they started, but they got their own. It's called Best of the Best. Now let's see how innovative this program is. On the left is the Club 100 form. On the right is the Best of the Best program. Any comments here, Christine?
Yeah, I mean, it's taking you through all the same tasks. And in fact, we were talking to people in various cities who said, oh, yeah, last week someone stood up and said, from now on, we're going to call it Best of the Best. No distinction between, we're having to radically overhaul this. It was like, it's a name change only. Herbalife wants it. And So one of the reasons we heard was like, people get jealous to hear some people have 100 clubs, so we'll just say best of the best. But there is some disclosure at the bottom, which implies
Oh,
this is,
the next
you're going to
one's
get to it.
some
Okay.
details, yeah.
But the people who were, it was seamless, their transition. They continued to do all these things, and it was their understanding they would need to continue to do them if they wanted to open a
Actually,
club.
let me make an analogy here. One of the lead generation systems in 2004 in Canada, what was it called, David?
Newest Way to Wealth?
Newest Way to Wealth was shut down because of litigation. And they ported over...
no, that was Global Online.
Yeah, why don't you explain the story? That's really powerful. Basically, it was something called Global Online, which is a lead generation system, and they were convicted of being a pyramid scheme in Canada. And the two women who owned the system, within 90 days of the court decision that was going to come down to shut down the business, they transferred it to their son-in-law. And he set up something called online business systems instead of Global Online. And actually, we have emails where they talk about, well, look, don't worry. You can even use the old forms until you run out of them. But very similar kind of transition where nothing effectively has changed. It's sort of like saying, Herbalife used to have distributors, but now they're calling them members. It's the same kind of subterfuge. David?
Well, Herbalife touts the new 90-day waiting period as if it's a cooling off to prevent people from getting committed too quickly. But in fact, they use the 90-day period to encourage recruits to become gradually committed, or they use this word engagement, to a training program. So they can be spending $5 a few times a week and then $30 on a Saturday and gradually get into the program. This is the translation of the legend that's on the bottom of the best form. And they say, the worksheet for Nutrition Club training will help to ensure that new Nutrition Club operators receive adequate training for their own successful Nutrition Club. Use this worksheet in your system to keep track of your attendance at each stage of the theoretical and practical training. This training will take 30 days to complete or can progress at a pace that is most comfortable for you. Before signing a tenancy agreement for the purpose of opening a non-residential nutrition club, you must complete the first 90 days since Herbalife accepted your application and membership agreement. So they're just slotting in during this 90-day waiting period, almost making you more desirous of getting to the end of that 90-day period. They're getting you committed financially and in terms of how you're spending your time.
Right.
It's
not a rogue distributor. This is a disclaimer written by Herbalife's lawyers that was put on the bottom of the form. Okay, Club 100 isn't the only one, okay, and there are many of them, and we're going to take you through how pervasive this is. And the people who run these programs are in the top 50 of the company. And here's Michael Johnson on Chairman's Club members. And one of the reasons we want to get this out of the way, our Chairman's Club, who are the real go-getters, the real leaders, the people who take the stage, to promote in front of people, who lead the parade in this company, who are heavily inspiring, motivating people. We have highly aspirational folks. We'll be on the phone with them in 2 hours to go through this in more depth, more discussions this year. So we've got to do. This will give us a ton of input and say, here is what you need to do. Here's the support we need to integrate the market. Yeah, and together, and this will also be because these are our global leaders. Let me just talk briefly about Chairman's Club members. There are 2 seats on the Herbalife board for Chairman Club members. There are 2 Chairman Club members on the board today, in addition to Michael Johnson. There have always been 2 seats. The 2 seats are like the most important franchisees of McDonald's. They have, the Chairman's Club members. They have enormous power over the company. The company, in order to control them, pays them bonuses. They're called Mark Hughes bonuses. They're just entirely discretionary bonuses. They pay them speaking fees, and most of the top Chairman's Club members are like ambassadors. Let's talk about some of them. So let's start at the top. Christine? Back one slide.
So this is, we tried to look back, once we discovered Club 100 and said, well, is this just a standalone kind of thing? Is it, did Jorge Ruiz just pull this out of thin air? And so we went back, kind of looked at the history and the transformation, and it seems that Universidad del Éxito begins with Eduardo Salazar, who was murdered in Mexico for double-crossing a hitman whom Salazar...
No, it was a double-crossing hitman. So he hired a hitman to kill someone else, and the other guy paid the hitman to kill him. True story. Yeah.
But he, as far as we can tell, invented this education concept, this idea that we're going to take you and run you through a certification process, and that's your way to success. He still has one of the biggest distributorships that's run through a corporation.
And he's dead. And the thing that I think is interesting here, and this is something that a bunch of people have told us about, former employees, Herbalife does not allow distributorships, as far as I can tell, to be owned in a corporation and passed on to, when you die. It can't be owned by an estate. This guy's been given a special pass. One of the biggest distributors in the history of the company, his 3 minor children, or they were minor at the time he died, are the beneficiaries. Very interesting, worth looking into if I were a member of the press.
I've never heard it anywhere but Club 100 trainings, but over and over again this concept that for Herbalife income will go 3 generations down. I don't know where that comes from. So this Universidad del Éxito it branches into all other kinds of training programs. We certainly found with Club 100, sometimes they just call them the classes, other times they'll stick this label on it. But it's a concept that, in order to open a club, in order to be experienced enough and familiar with how this works, you've got to get to that graduation. And then along the way, you're going to consume a lot of product, basically.
And you notice it has the Herbalife name and logo. They're very protective of it. They promote it when they want to.
And also they approve the use of the Herbalife logo. So this is so pervasive, if obviously the company didn't approve of the use of their logo, it wouldn't be on this Universidad del Éxito. And if you look on LinkedIn, people consider proud of their degrees from Universidad del Éxito. 2,500 people listed on their resumes. Next.
So this is the couple that...
Enrique Varela.
Yeah, Enrique Varela and Gracie Amir. They created the whole nutrition club concept. So you just keep clicking through.
That's Michael Johnson there on the right. The point here is that these people are constantly feted in gala type contexts. The company runs an annual event for the top 50 and the Founders Club members. It's a boondoggle. I'm told by former employees they spend $4 million on this event, and it's a boondoggle for a week or 2 in Europe or on a cruise and so on.
So they were recruited directly by Eduardo Salazar and, are big users of the Universidad del Éxito concept. Here's the woman who's been considered the #1 distributor of Herbalife products for years in a row. I guess 2008, 10, 11, 12, maybe 13. And
she's from Mexico.
From Mexico, yep.
This is another one where we got anonymous letters saying, this is someone that you need to look into.
The Sandovals also Chairman's Club members, and they are, I think, as the second that, now do primarily the Hispanic Nutrition Club business in the U.S.
Success University.
And so, yeah, click through, you'll see, again,
back up, sorry, I went ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so again, you'll just see that they're an example if you click ahead. They're describing themselves as class of 2010, Universidad del Éxito, and they anticipate being President's Team 2015, which is typical. People think, I'll invest, it's like in education, I will invest 4 or 5 years. That would be
But if you think about an education, right, education is hard. You've got to work hard. You've got to sort of complete
spend
things.
Money.
You've got to spend money on it. It's an investment. And so that's consistent with how this is sold.
This is something one of their downline posted. I mean, it looks like an ad for a university, maybe a for-profit university, but the translation, with the most renowned teachers, again, replace recruiters, lesson after lesson, you get outstanding achievements. I mean, you could confuse that for a real college.
And this is a former board member of Herbalife. There he is with Michael Johnson. He's Founder Circle. We think there are 6 or 7 of these. These are even higher than Chairman's Club. Made it big in Russia, among other places. And it was on the board of directors for 5 years. Humberto James. There he is on the cover of Herbalife today when they're announcing their nuevo Chairman Club member. I'm sorry for massacring Spanish. I wish I could speak the language.
Right, and he has his own program, this LCAT, Centro Apoyo Tecamac. He's referred to as professor. And the group, you can see lots of, and we have some at the end where you see people, unlike Club 100, they don't wear the
Yeah, they wear
helping out
full
so
gowns.
much,
They wear
but
full gowns.
Yeah,
By the way, the L in the EL is for training leaders.
training
It
leaders.
looks like the Spanish article EL, but it stands for
Training leaders.
Entrenamiento.
And by the way, he became a Chairman's Club member. Go back one slide, please. Oh, no, go back 2 slides, sorry. Okay, so this guy became Chairman's Club in 2013 through nutrition clubs and training. Next.
So this is another group. It's four or five Venezuelan Chairman's Club members, and you keep clicking through. They have this OPS, which stands for Online President's System. So they put it right in the name, and again, big. They send their people to these classes and call it Universidad del Éxito. And just because we're keeping track of how many people in the Chairman's Club are benefiting from this, we've got 2 ex-wives that we also added to the list of beneficiaries.
This guy you want to marry. He leaves you with a big endowment. Okay, here we go. This we know.
Club 100, that we went through. Jorge Ruiz, Esther Espinoza created the Club 100, which when you start to look at the other ones, you see it really, they all are copycat. It's the same thing. He trademarked his. Here's Art Wesley and Lourdes Montero. They're also, they're credited with bringing the Mexican Nutrition Club concept to the U.S. So they're like over all the U.S. nutrition clubs. And again, just with Facebook and things, Lourdes, attends Club 100 events. Edgar Balbas.
Looks cleaned up there in the upper left. He became Chairman's Club in 2013.
Juan Mendoza.
There's Des Walsh as well. It's got the trademark Herbalife tie.
Again, he uses this training. And as we often find with top people at Herbalife, he's related to another Chairman's Club member, brother-in-law of Fernando Rancel, who was in the president's organization that uses Universidad del Éxito.
Now notice how important this is to the growth of the company in the last few years. That's why these guys are becoming Chairman's Club members all in 2013. Right? This is a huge driver of the earnings of the company.
And you look at the number of Venezuelans, I think it's interesting. And where's a place where sort of here, go through this certification, we've got a job, we've got an answer, we can get you paid in U.S. dollars. It's
this is an interesting phenomenon.
Program.
So Venezuela sales last quarter were up 90%. That's for a weight loss nutrition powder that's very expensive. If you just look at what's going on in Venezuela right now, there are lines to buy food. We believe that people are principally using Herbalife in Venezuela to change money. So you buy Venezuela bolivars on the black market, and Herbalife is actually still selling on the basis of an official exchange rate. And you can actually, because they will pay you commissions if you have an address outside of Venezuela in US dollars, it's one of the only ways to get money out of Venezuela. And by the way, I don't think the Venezuelan government is aware of this. Maybe they'll be shortly. But this is effectively a money transfer scheme in Venezuela. Pedro Cardoza, what is the significance of him? Sharp-looking guy, nice tie, Michael Johnson. Well, he's currently on the board of directors of Herbalife. He's the second Chairman Club member other than John Tartle. And I'm not going to pronounce this Basso. I'll get it wrong, right?
Basso 100. Yeah, just a complete spin-off. They haven't even changed the name on the graphic.
And so let's take a
from
look.
his Facebook page.
Yeah, here's his Facebook page.
It was hard to read the language there, but he said he's reviewing the materials, and they're all going to be in Brazil soon. And this is the new copyright 2013 Herbalife training form.
So Herbalife's taken over Club 100. See the little disclaimer at the bottom and see the list of 10 people. They use different colors, though, than the Club 100. So next, Doran Andrew. So Doran Andrew, one of the top lead generation distributors. We have great stuff, transcripts, recordings of Doran talking about how, well, Nutrition Clubs is just the next new thing. We did lead generation. Now we've got this Nutrition Club thing. It's the same thing, guys. And this guy's a brilliant salesman. He runs a version of University del Éxito called Success University in the U.S. He ran Newest Way to Wealth. They were sued in 2004 or 2003 for committing fraud, securities fraud, making deceptive earnings claims. Herbalife paid the $6 million to settle this, interestingly, and they made sure to promote him to be a Chairman's Club member of the company, and now he's on the next new thing, the Nutrition Club. Next. David Bevan and Jane Clark. There's Michael Johnson. The logo. They're 2014 Chairman Club members, and they use the English language version of Success University. Next. South Korea.
Yeah, this was interesting because I think maybe it's the one, at least the only reference I was ever able to find of an Herbalife executive addressing Club 100, and Des Walsh was asked, how does this, do you retain, do people stay longer? How does this work out for Club 100 people? Because I've been in a number of their clubs, and what he said was, no, we haven't tracked the retention rate, but what we do know, quote, systemized training approaches have a higher level of duplication earlier, and the greatest example of that is Korea. So when the Koreans recognized the potential that the Nutrition Club model had for Korea, they instituted a systemized training approach rapidly. So there are, I think it's maybe the second largest number of Chairman's Club members are Korean after the US. So.
Okay, so what does this mean for Herbalife? Let's assume for a moment that, like lead generation, Herbalife couldn't stand the scrutiny of lead generation. They're going to have to shut down nutrition clubs if the government doesn't shut them down before then. Let's assume they shut it down. How significant is this? So the company has repeatedly said in the last couple of years 33 to 41%. We think that number is low. We think it could be half of Herbalife sales today because lead generation has been shut down, and this has become more and more important to the company. Let me just sort of, here's what I think's happened, right? If you look at Madoff, the problem with Ponzi schemes is once you get into one, you're stuck. Because unless you keep it going and keep your people happy and keep reporting good numbers, when you blow up, you're going to jail. And that's the problem with the Ponzi scheme. So when you start small, the numbers get larger and larger. And Madoff, at a certain point in time, you're like, okay, if it's a $100 million pyramid scheme, I'm going to jail for 20 years. If it's a $50 billion, if it's a $100 million Ponzi scheme, I'm going to jail for 20 years. If it's a $100 billion Ponzi scheme, it's only so long. I mean, Madoff got like a 160-year sentence. Pyramid schemes are really the same. Once you get into them, you're stuck. And once lead generation gets shut down, or you run out of recruits, you got to keep going to new geographies. When you run out of countries, you got to have new methods. And you got to go deeper and deeper. And when you run out of middle-class people, you have to go after people who make $2 a day, because there's $13 trillion of revenue there. The problem is no other pyramid scheme in the world figured out how to access that market. Okay, I said at the very beginning in December of 2012 that Herbalife was the best managed pyramid scheme in the world. And Michael Johnson will go down in history as the best CEO of a pyramid scheme in the world. And he was trained at Disney, and he learned how to open countries, and he learned about the Hispanic market, probably from Disney and from his board experience at Univision. And then they used a best practice methodology. And a distributor in Mexico developed the Nutrition Club, and Herbalife made sure to promote it. Let's use the 40% of revenue number that they're now using, okay? And, I'm sorry, we're doing low to high here. This is, go back one page. So we're using his 33 to 41% range, but we think it's closer to 50 now. Let's use 33 to 41. What does it mean for earnings? Well, this company that made $5 a share is only going to make 41 cents if it's 31% of revenues, because again, every one of these dollars is like 100% contribution after paying for the royalties to the distributors. On the high end, this company's losing money, right? So, again, while it's only, call it 40% of revenues, it's 112% of the profits of the company because of the high fixed costs or the nature of the business. I think an EBITDA metric's more appropriate if you're thinking financial leverage. Now, one of the things Herbalife did to defend the company is they raised a $1.15 billion convert. that they sold to hedge funds who shorted the stock, and they delivered a synthetic short so that people didn't have to make a bet on the direction of the stock. They were only doing a volatility trade. And if you take the contribution margin from nutrition clubs and you get rid of it because they are forced to shut it down, well, all of a sudden they're no longer not covering their debt, and they're not meeting their covenant, so they're in breach. And of course, being a pyramid scheme violates the compliance with laws covenant. But the point here is that this thing disappears. I said yesterday that the company, I forgot the word I used, collapses or implodes. Well, it implodes without nutrition clubs. Now, what are insiders doing? Now, interestingly, last year, after we made our presentation, the stock went from 46 to 25, and then it went from, began the year at 32, and it went to 83. And the reason why I know these prices is, when you're short, you really know the price of a stock. Now, interesting, last year at 83, they weren't selling any shares. They sold $1 million of stock, the insiders. But something happened, really beginning around March. Some guy sold 10,000 shares in January, okay. Well, in March, the Federal Trade Commission launched a formal investigation of the company. Michael Johnson then decided to sell $15.1 million worth of stock in May. And why did he wait till May? Because he waited for the quarter to end and I think be reported. And then John Tartle on the board, well, he sold $3.2 million of stock. Another director sold $1 million of stock, and this guy was smart. He got off the board. He quit. 5 directors resigned before the annual meeting last year. And then they had to fill those spots last minute, and they called Icon, and unfortunately Carl made the mistake of putting 5 of his people on this board. It's an interesting board. You've got 5 directors from Icon. You've got Michael Johnson. You've got 2 Chairman's Club members, and you have 2, we'll talk about them in a moment. But pretty pervasive selling. There was a sale just last week, $23 million of stock. Now, the interesting thing is Michael Johnson was smart about this. The company launched a $1.6 billion buyback, and they did an interesting trade where they did a kind of a trade with Merrill Lynch, where Merrill Lynch basically bought stock, or I guess shorted stock to the company, so the company could cancel the shares, and then committed to kind of one of these trades where you short stock to the company, and then you buy $500 million worth of stock between the time of that transaction, which I think was sometime in March, and all the way through to June 30. And the beauty of that is that you lock in the shares, you can cancel them immediately, and then Merrill goes into the market and covers its position. Michael Johnson, so what happens here, if you go back and look at the tape, Federal Trade Commission launches an investigation, stock hits 49. They do this massive buyback program, they drive it to 68. While it's heading up, Michael Johnson, the company's saying it's a great time to buy stock, it's cheap. The CEO is selling $15 million of stock into the company's buyback. I think that is a beautiful trade. Okay. Now, this is not the first time Michael Johnson sold stock. This is from our original presentation. My concern about Michael was that he really needed that $15 million. That's why he sold. But he sold $140 million of the stock before we showed up. So now he's got $155 million. He's got to pay some taxes, but I think he's a good place. Okay. Here's the buyback. So we do our thing. They buy back stock pretty consistently. But interestingly, note the massive buyback. They're buying back the most amount of stock when the stock is at the highest price. Why do they do the buyback? Because this is a confidence game. And when the Federal Trade Commission launches a formal investigation, if the stock collapses, that could cause you to lose distributor confidence. If you lose distributor confidence, and riddled through the earnings transcripts are Michael Pearson, I'm sorry, God forbid, Michael Johnson talking about distributor confidence. I got to keep you guys, paying attention, And Michael Johnson talking how important confidence is and how confidence is building. But when confidence goes away, con games go away. So how could they have gotten away with this? And this is one of my favorite things. So in the press release that Herbalife put out when we announced this presentation, and they're scared. Got to take a look at the Herbalife PR machine, where they've been pretty active over the last few days. And here's one of the sentences that's very powerful. I call this the power of the big lie. With Pershing Square's limited accountability, in light of the historical regulatory scrutiny placed on Herbalife, it has made the astonishing claim that it is a provable certainty Herbalife is a massive, sprawling fraud that had gone undetected for more than 30 years. Pershing Square is claiming that decades of Herbalife management and a material number of members had all kept this secret. Now, big lies are used by totalitarian regimes and by the Nazis and by lots of people. And people generally believe big lies because they're so bold that how can it possibly be false? Madoff was managing $50 billion. The notion that a $50 billion money manager was running a pyramid scheme, well, that's why people kept putting money into it, because it was the biggest lie of all time. Small lies people don't get away with. Big lies people get away with. Now, they're helped. It's easier to get away with a big lie if other people give you credibility. Well, who gives Herbalife credibility? Unfortunately, our very own Securities and Exchange Commission. This is an SEC-registered company. The SEC, I have enormous respect for. It's a great organization. They do a lot of good. Unfortunately, they missed this one. And that gives this company a lot of credibility. And the New York Stock Exchange gives them a listing. And then the market, you know, even today with the stock crushed yesterday, it had a $6 billion enterprise value and $5 billion in revenues. I mean, what pyramid scheme has $5 billion in revenues, is listed on the New York Stock Exchange, is audited by Price Waterhouse? By the way, that was another thing that D. Simone talked about this morning. Price Waterhouse re-audited our books. Well, Price Waterhouse should be ashamed of itself. Well, then there are the analysts. Now, you can't say I didn't warn the analysts, okay? Not one Herbalife analyst ever called us. Not one. Not one Herbalife analyst ever took anything we said seriously. Go read all the research reports. They talk about noise. The worst of them is this guy, Tim Ramey. I heard that he got fired, but I don't know if that's true or not, so I can't say that for sure. But interesting, he left Tim Ramey and Company. He was the biggest bull. He had $100 and something price target. He left right at the end of the year, and Bill Sturritz hired him. Bill Sturritz is one of the largest shareholders of Herbalife. Why did Bill Sturritz hire him? Now, interestingly, Bill Sturritz owns Herbalife personally. He owns more than 5% of the stock as a 13D filer. Bill Sturritz is one of the great CEOs of all time in this country. He's in the Outsiders book. I featured the Outsiders book to talk about Valiant and Mike Pearson. And he's, I think, a great guy. And I hear good things about him. And I'm one person removed from him. And one of my advisory board members knows him well. And I offered to meet with him. But he wasn't interested in meeting with me. But when Tim Ramey left D.A. Davidson and Company, he was hired not by Bill Sturritz, but Bill Sturritz's company, Post, hired Tim Ramey in the strategy department. Now, why did that happen? Because Tim Ramey was the biggest bull in the stock, and if word got out that he was let go, that's bad because he was the biggest bull. But if word got out that he actually got a job working in strategy for Bill Sturritz, that helps the perception that, you know, he's a legitimate guy. But I find it striking that if I were a Post shareholder, that we're spending Post money supporting a trade that is Mr. Sturritz's trade personally. Analyst price targets, the lowest one is 65. The others, if you notice, are 73, 85, 90, 94, and there's a bull here. Davidson, I guess he quit right after putting out the 115 price target. Quit or was fired, I don't know. Now, unfortunately, the best pyramid schemes try to recruit credible people to give them, credibility. Unfortunately, people will take reputations built up over a lifetime, and for money, well, take a look. This is Secretary of State.
And I like the idea of an American product being helpful to people in other parts of the world. And so it has every combination of things that I like. It's a very good product, delivered by really good people.
One of the things that our distributors are working very hard to do is take our business opportunity to really to the lowest socioeconomic level. We've got these things called nutrition clubs going, and these home-based businesses are starting, where people are inviting people over, and they're replacing a bad meal. And we see this as an opportunity to go into markets worldwide. Where do you think we need to focus more?
I have been to those places, believe me. I have seen people that are dirt poor that then spend money on things that are not healthy.
And they're in a cycle.
And it's a cycle. I've also seen that people can't find a job. So the combination of you helping people to have a healthy nutritional meal that is not that expensive, that is provided to them by people who also want a job, is a totally win-win situation. I think the way, in America, I think a lot of people see it as a way to lose weight. I can testify to that.
Right.
But I think in other places, people need to see it more as a nutritional way to live, that it is a way that they can get a good meal that provides them with the basic life. I mean, the hardest part, I have to tell you, Michael, is we all diet and other people are starving. And you actually have a product that deals with both.
It's kind of amazing.
It is kind of amazing.
It's kind of amazing. I do think it's amazing. Now, well, let's go back. We have a second video of Madeleine Albright, and not only do they do these kind of interviews, but they use her at extravaganzas. Can we go to the extravaganza video? Where is that?
I don't know. If it's teed up. Let's see.
Okay, we'll come back to that. It's worth playing. Let's go to the next slide. Now, we didn't have a video from Mr. Villagrosa, but Herbalife put one out yesterday, last night. We were working hard, so let's see it. Video, please.
At a time when so many people in the United States are obese and overweight, and in the Latino community where those percentages are even higher than the national average, it's important that there is a company like Herbalife to send the message that we need to change our eating habits, we need to change our lifestyle.
Next. Okay, so the other two independent directors, when we raised the issue of Herbalife targeting Hispanic people, Herbalife has been trying to do everything they can to create credibility in the Hispanic community. So they found the highest ranking Hispanic official at the State Department, formerly, and she's the first Latina Undersecretary of State, and they got her to join the board of Herbalife and got her to make promotional statements about the company. So she is currently on the board of Herbalife. So there's the 5 icon directors, there's the 2 Chairman's Club members, there's Michael Johnson, and then there's Maria, poor Maria. Next, we've got Richard Carmona. So other than being the former CEO of, CEO of Canyon Ranch, which is again, this is a very good organization. He was the 17th Surgeon General of the United States. He happens to be Hispanic. He was in the U.S. Army. This is a person of very high integrity. He's on the board of Herbalife. And then they have this Nobel laureate to create credibility around the products, make them sound special. Herbalife spends, quote, a de minimis amount of R&D, but they promote the fact that they're the only nutrition club that has a Nobel laureate affiliated with the company. Now, I believe Dr. Ignaro is the wealthiest Nobel laureate. Why? Because Herbalife has paid him $21.2 million for serving as the company's spokesperson. And when you go to extravaganzas, they roll out Dr. Ignaro. And when you go to the January 10th, if you go back to the video, the January 10th Analyst Day to respond to us, they had Dr. Ignaro out there. No second Albright video. Well, okay, guys, find it. It's on the internet. Okay, next. There's David Beckham, LA Galaxy. He's now, I guess, retired. But, apparently the best-selling soccer T-shirt in the world was the David Beckham's uniform. And he's a talented guy. And then, of course, we have more recent sponsorship with Lionel Messi. Now, why football? Because of the target market. Latino audience here, you watch the World Cup in Brazil, this is an incredible audience to promote Herbalife to. So Herbalife. The customers are fictitious. The business opportunity is a scam. The university degree is fraud. The fraud has been perpetrated by senior management. This company was a fraud before Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson elevated the fraud, brought modern professional management techniques, market segmentation. And by the way, what does Madeleine Albright really do for the company? I believe she's what enabled Herbalife to get into a lot of markets, like China. Why hasn't China shut down Herbalife after we made our presentation? Well, unfortunately, Madeleine Albright has a lot of sway in China. And that's how she's used. And by the way, I don't think Madeleine Albright knows it's a pyramid scheme. But she certainly didn't do any due diligence even after we went public. This is being orchestrated not just by senior management, by the Chairman's Club members, by the President's team. They conceived, designed, and executed the strategy to exploit the poor. Now, when we went public, December 20th of 2012, our goal was to catalyze a regulatory investigation of the company. To the SEC's credit, they launched an investigation January 9th of 2013. Unfortunately, the SEC has not shut this company down, and that was something that actually gave a lot of comfort to investors, is that one of the things we hear from the bulls is the SEC launched a formal investigation in January of 2013, and if there's anything wrong, we would have heard about it by now, clearly. And unfortunately, I think that's a failure on the part of the SEC, even though they're hardworking, high-quality people. The FTC, we believe, has been investigating this company on a preliminary basis for perhaps a year and a half, and they launched a formal investigation. I think they're working very hard, and we wish them well. Department of Justice launched a criminal investigation, as well as the FBI. That was announced in press reports. It was apparently leaked by both of these government agencies. Sometimes agencies leak the fact that they're interested when they want victims to come forward and talk to them. If you have information that would lead and otherwise assist these investigators, I encourage you to call your local FBI office or Department of Justice in the Southern District. The New York AG, according to press reports, launched an investigation here. We believe they've been working for a while, the Illinois AG. So the government is doing its job, but unfortunately, and here's the really unfortunate part, Michael Johnson became CEO of this company in April 2013. 2003. Here we are. It's 11 years later. The victims have about $24 billion less money. The $24 billion is the cumulative revenues of Herbalife over that 10-year period of time. Since the company is growing so quickly, each year that you wait is, last year was $5 billion. So the fraud is affecting more and more people. And by the way, they're going deeper and deeper and deeper, poorer and poorer. You have to be pretty desperate when you register, when you're concerned about losing the Herbalife Burundi web address. And you got to register it right away, pay the fee. So look, just a couple of personal reflections. My father's here. My family came to this country in the 1880s. My grandfather came from Russia. His name was Abraham Gechtman. They didn't get his name right at immigration. He ended up in Newark. He didn't have any skills, but he was hardworking. He was 16 or 17 years old. Someone helped him apprentice as a tailor, and that's how he made a living. And he worked his way up, and eventually he had a coat factory, and he had 4 kids, including my grandfather. And my grandfather went to high school. My grandfather was a successful mortgage broker. My grandfather had one son. My dad went to college. That was my grandfather's ambition. My father went to business school. Okay? And I'm a huge beneficiary, okay, of this country. Okay? Michael Johnson is a predator. Okay? This is a criminal enterprise. Okay? I hope you're listening, Michael. And it's time to shut the company down. Okay, so with that, I'm going to take a break, and we'll come back for Q&A. And we'll show you some graduates of the program. Before they do that, we're going to show you the Albright video, because I can't help myself.
She's got Dorothy's shoes on today. She's an ambassador for you every single day. Would you warmly welcome Madeline Corbell Albright? Thank you.
Okay, we're going to show you some graduates of the program, and we'll be back. Feel free to take a bio break. Feel free to head home. But we're going to be back for Q&A as long as you have questions. Thank you. Back. The others will come, but I figured I'd start the questions. We've got to head to Canada for Valiant. So, questions? Yes, sir. Wait, do we have microphones? Hold on. Thank you.
Have you thought about soliciting a class for a class action suit?
There's already a couple of class actions underway. The problem is Herbalife's been sued many times. And what happens to class action? You have a victim who doesn't have a lot of money, hires a plaintiff firm. The plaintiff firm sues Herbalife. Herbalife's got really good lawyers. They fight back really hard. Oftentimes they sue the person that's suing them. And then if they get close to being revealed as a pyramid scheme, which happened to them in California, where a judge said, I can't really see much difference between this and a pyramid scheme. They were being sued by a top distributor who left for being a pyramid scheme. They settled. They write a check. And the problem with the class action bar is, the lawyer has got to make a living. So he's not going to shut the company down, but if he can get $10 million and get a third of it, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I think it's good that we have lawyers who will work on an incentive basis. So the class action doesn't do anything. Yes, question in front.
Hi, Mr. Ackman. My name's Ethan Everett. I'm a finance major at Bucknell University. My question to you is, as you mentioned earlier, Herbalife was subject to the injunction in California decades ago.
Yes.
And they acknowledged that in their financial statements, but the injunction said that they had to track that they had actual sales to external customers in order to be in compliance with that injunction. How have they gotten away with that so long, for literally decades, when they even openly admit that they don't track retail sales?
So my point of view, and I'm a very straight talker, is Herbalife's a California company. They employ a lot of people in California. They are, if you go back to the conference call transcripts, Michael Johnson talks about going down to Washington on a quarterly basis. Got a lot of friends in Washington. They got a congressman that supports them, this guy Becerra, Congressman Becerra. AGs are inherently political. The California AG could shut this company down tomorrow on the consent decree because Herbalife's in violation of it. They've been in violation of it, probably 20 years. We've approached the California AG. The California AG is one of the AGs that was not willing to meet with us, which I think is really unfortunate.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, hi.
Up here. Where are you?
Up here, up here. Right over here. How are you?
I can't see you.
Right.
Okay, there you go.
Got it?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Moses Towell, and I don't understand something. You got this nice presentation, which you spent a lot of money on, and so far you've rattled off dozens of people who are all clueless. Madeleine Albright, she's clueless. David Beckham, he's clueless. Everybody's clueless except for you. I don't understand. Tell me, why is Carl Icahn making a mistake? Show me exactly the illegality that Herbalife is doing to get this company shut down. I don't see it. And why is everybody else on the other side?
Okay, well, sounds like you're a bull.
No, I'm not a bull or I'm a bear.
By the way, it's a great question. Okay, it's a great question. Let me answer it.
Give me a great answer.
Okay, you have to give me a chance to speak. Carl Icahn, if you go back to his 13D, he bought 1 million shares when the stock collapsed on our first presentation that day. So he didn't have a lot of time to do research. Carl didn't buy any stock, actually, when the stock went lower. I think he bought those shares at 30, the stock went to 20-something, and went lower, he was down, he didn't buy any shares. Bought none. January 25th, I had a conversation with Carl Icahn on CNBC, inadvertent conversation. He got pretty heated during that conversation. That was a Friday. Monday morning, he started buying Herbalife stock after that conversation. He bought 16 million shares. And what I can tell you is we've had an army working on this project. Hundreds of people, investigators, lawyers, and the brilliant Christine Richard, and a very talented team at Pershing Square. I have personally read every document that Herbalife has, SEC filing, every conference call transcript multiple times, including again in the last few days. This is an ingenious fraud, okay? But there's no way that Carl Icahn actually, and this is a defense of Carl Icahn, Carl Icahn is one of the great back-of-the-envelope investors of all time. He's made $22 billion on the back of an envelope. But Carl Icahn didn't do the kind of due diligence we did. Look, the Nutrition Club thing is designed to be secretive, okay? This is, ingenious frauds. I mean, think about it. You go after people who are the lowest income, most unsophisticated. Many of them are undocumented. By the way, when people complain, they get threatened about being given their names given to immigration. Okay, you don't complain when you're an undocumented immigrant because you might get thrown out of the country. And the Club 100 rules aren't like on Herbalife's website, and it's taken us till now. Okay, look, we wrote a little bit about nutrition clubs in December. I didn't know about Club 100. I didn't know about these systems. This is something we figured out. It took us 2 years.
Bill.
Let me continue. It's taken us 3 years. Madeleine Albright doesn't know anything about pyramid schemes. Madeleine Albright sees an SEC-registered company on the New York Stock Exchange with a $6 billion market cap, and she gets a phone call from a top law firm. I won't mention names. And the law firm says, will you work for this company? Well, she's in the business of consulting to major corporations. The major corporation, it's not her job to read the SEC filings and to determine whether or not it's a pyramid scheme. She presumes it's a legitimate company. The big lie, what legitimate company, what pyramid scheme has got a $6 billion market cap on the New York Stock Exchange, SEC registered in this country? By the way, the reason why this fraud has been allowed to be exported globally is because it's an SEC registered company. That gives it legitimacy. So those are the facts. Next question, please.
Wait, Bill.
You know what? I'm not going to have a personal conversation with you. If you want to come back, I'll get to you. Okay, but let the other people ask questions. Next, up front here.
Hi, Mr. Ackman. Thank you very much. My name is Susan Wang, and I'm a student at NYU Stern. My question is as follows. The nutrition clubs you mentioned are not managed directly by Herbalife, and as was mentioned in the video prior, not even a majority of Herbalife members are part of these nutrition clubs. So why and how do you think this information you presented on these nutrition clubs will topple the entire empire?
Okay, so Well, nutrition clubs are quote-unquote only 40 to 50% of the revenues of the company. If they go away, the company goes away. So that's number one. They're high operating leverage. You lose $1 of volume, you lose a lot more of that, greater percentage of your profit. 40% of revenues is 100% of the profits of the company. But again, we're exposing a fraud. We're doing it in a very public way. The other thing I think is likely to happen is some other people are going to decide, if I were an Herbalife employee right now, what would you be thinking? If I'm aware of the fraud and I have evidence that can prove the fraud, do I hang out around at Herbalife or do I call the government? That's sort of how it happens. Next, up front.
I'm Bill Albert from Barron's. Anything going on with other governments?
With other governments?
Yeah, the U.S., federal, state, your best.
So the Canadian government launched an investigation of Herbalife about what we know for sure several months ago, maybe 6-9 months ago. We know nothing about what happened with that. And we know of no other investigations in other countries. Next. Just gentleman with a microphone, or lady with a microphone.
Hi, Antoine Guerra with The Street. If there is more indication of investigations underway, but your options contracts expire, what would you consider doing?
So let me separate a couple of things. I'm a fiduciary for investors. I manage a hedge fund, and we're going to manage the portfolio in a way that makes sense for those investors. I've said publicly I will take this to the end of the earth. I was made fun for making a comment like that. I meant it. I'm not going to take it to the end of the earth with my investors' capital unless that's the right thing to do from an economically rational point of view for the investment. But I'm going to take it to the end of the earth from my own personal point of view. If the right thing to do, one of the questions I was asked by Stephanie Rule on Bloomberg was, look, if it becomes intolerable for you to be short this stock, what are you going to do? The answer is we're going to do whatever makes economic sense. That means cover, we cover, up or down. If it means we change the form of the position. We've managed this position in a way that we think is prudent for our investors. Now, we like to have investments that are what I call good for America, and most of our good for America investments are buying stock in a company and working to bring in the best management we can and making them more valuable. I also think it's a very, very good thing for America to have people who look for fraudulent companies and expose them. And if you can give them an incentive to find those companies by allowing people to short stocks, which is one of the permitted ways that you can invest in America, it's actually a really good system. As I mentioned, we didn't set out to spend $50 million researching this company. But people made fun. Herbalife always talks about the $1 billion short position. Well, the $1 billion short position is what enabled us to spend the money required to do the work here because we had the possibility of profit. Now, of course, when you short something and you're going to make a profit if the business fails, everyone says, oh, you just believe that. You're subject to attack because you're going to make a profit if it fails. No one attacks you for buying a stock and saying it's worth a lot more. They only attack you for shorting a stock and saying it's a fraud. Okay? Now, to help blunt those accusations, I've committed, and I'll do it again, to give away all of my personal profits that I will make from this investment, and I'm going to give it. I've learned a lot more about the Latino community. I've learned a lot more about organizations that support this community. I'm going to focus the resources globally on the people that have been harmed. The Pershing Square Foundation already focuses on economically disadvantaged people. It already focuses on education. This company is it's a travesty, and it's also a tragedy. Right? You think about. I look at my personal circumstance. Right? I came to this country. I had a great-grandfather who walked across the continent from Russia until he found himself at some port, managed to get on a boat, came all the way here because he had heard about this was a place where, you can build, there was this American dream thing. And the sad thing is, the American dream has been tarnished, I think in a lot of different ways. One of the ways is, we have, it's harder for people to come up from the bottom and make progress in our country. But when you have a New York Stock Exchange company specifically targeting people and then using the American dream marketing principles, you heard. I found we have a lot more than just the samples we gave you of the selling that goes on here, and they sell the American dream. They play on people's dreams. It's criminal. Now, unfortunately, the regulators take too long.
A quick question.
I'm going to go to. My father's asking a question. This is always risky to call on your father. Okay.
The definition of a pyramid scheme is what, Bill?
What is the definition?
Definition, I mean, I'll go to David. The shortest answer I'll give is it's a company. Well, go ahead, David.
And how close are you getting to be able to prove that it is a pyramid scheme?
Dad, if you don't know it by now. Go ahead, David.
A pyramid scheme under the court cases is defined as an enterprise that encourages recruitment over retailing. So if you can't...
And it relies on deception.
It uses deception, it uses a pyramidal structure, and it focuses people on getting new people in. In the case of Herbalife, each distributor is probably losing money themselves, but hoping they can make it up by getting someone else to get in and lose their money, which then flows up to the upline.
Next. Up front, please.
Hi, you've stated publicly you'd like to help Mr. Icahn get out of his position at a profit. Hypothetically, is it possible for a hedge fund manager to take out a counterparty in a trade like that?
I think it's tough. I think there are regulatory restrictions against buying from an insider to cover a short position. We wouldn't really want to do that anyway. Look, I think the best thing for Carl is, number one, I don't believe he knew. And I think the best evidence of that is how he bought the stock. He didn't do a sufficient enough research. He was very promotional about the company last year, but I think he's got the defense of ignorance. I think he's kind of stuck here, but in a way, now, and again, I haven't been following where the stock price is, but now there's still more. We actually have more, believe it or not. But most of the inside information is out. The company announces earnings next week. They put out their 10Q. I mean, all the other directors are selling. I don't know why Carl can't. So I would think, if I were Carl, I would take my 5 representatives off the board of directors. I would say, you know what? Every once in a while I screw up. I miss this one. And I'd blow the thing out and I'd move on. If I were Bill Sturritz, Bill Sturritz is a phenomenal CEO. I think he knows a lot about, food products. He doesn't know anything about a pyramid scheme. He relied on Tim Ramey. The company hired some Northwestern marketing professor to say they're not a pyramid scheme. They put a little white paper on their website. He read that. This is all according to a Bloomberg article. And so he spoke to the company, he spoke to Tim Ramey, and he spoke to that other person, and he became comfortable it wasn't a pyramid scheme. And then he invested a third of his net worth, supposedly, in the stock. If I were he, I would sell. Yes, over here.
Hey, first I just want to say thank you for the research that you've done. I don't know about anybody else, but for myself it's become extremely clear that there are very little, if any, retail sales in these nutrition clubs. So unlike what the perception is with some other people, I think saner heads will prevail in your case. I get it. My question is with regards to the Venezuelan currency conversion. And I just wanted to know if you could comment on the amount of assets or cash that the company has tied into Venezuela, and how the Bolivar exchange rate issues could potentially affect the company going forward in their financials.
So the interesting thing is, and again, this goes to kind of back to the Bernie Madoff thing, you got to keep the scheme going. And so the companies approach their accounting for their Venezuelan business, and I think an extremely aggressive way. And again, I think this is really kind of a bad one for Pricewaterhouse. Venezuela has grown enormously. If you count the money in terms of, I'd call it Herbalife gap accounting, right? But if you actually use the exchange rate where transactions are happening, they're losing a fortune because they're paying someone, US dollars based on a royalty rate using an official exchange rate, but their money is stuck, the money they pay them is stuck in Venezuela, and they can't expatriate it. Herbalife can't get it out. And it's like a couple $100 million on the balance sheet, marked at the official rate. It's in Venezuela. On the unofficial rate, it's worth something like 10 cents on the dollar. And then if they were to, so that's tough for them to get the money back. And also, I think their earnings have been meaningfully overstated. The 2 biggest drivers of growth in the company in terms of reported earnings were Venezuela and China last quarter. And we think in China they're also operating illegally. Next, over here on the up top right.
Hi, Julie Hyman from Bloomberg TV. I wanted to follow up on your dad's question, actually, about how close you are to proving that it's a pyramid scheme, because you've laid out an argument once again today that seems, frankly, largely circumstantial. And so, I mean, maybe you could connect the dots that have not been connected between, I mean, if you're saying Club 100's of using fraudulent measures, and the company is aware of it. I mean, where's sort of the direct line here from Herbalife to fraud?
Maybe I didn't do a good job. What we're telling you is 40 to 50% of the revenues of the company come from a business method called a nutrition club, which itself is entirely fraudulent. They've got fake customers. These are not customers. These are people who are buying into a mini pyramid scheme. All right? There's nothing circumstantial about it. We have facts. We have video. We have audio. In fact, the company has all these same facts. The company promotes, in Club 100, they're completely aware of it, and they promote the people who run these programs. Half of the Chairman's Club members, perhaps more, run these programs. You saw the photographs of Michael Johnson. How did this guy make so much money so quickly? Shouldn't the company be asking that question? Of course they know. He's running a nutrition club. So it's not just the pyramid scheme part that the law they're violating. They're violating, I can't count the number of laws, but David, do you have a point of view here? It's not, we don't have to prove that they're, look, I think we've proven it's a pyramid scheme, but we're not a court of law. I think the market will decide whether this is a legitimate business or not. But I hope that having seen the presentation and understanding what's been taking place, it's not as presented by the company. The company's representing that these sales and nutrition clubs are sort of, these are like, they call it, we're competing against McDonald's. That's what they say. That's what D. Simone says. We view our competition as McDonald's. As far as I can tell, McDonald's doesn't run its business this way. David?
Yeah, I think we've proven it as best we can. If we had a subpoena, we could do an even better job because we would then get all of their records. But the company has not put out their churn rates, which we expect are extremely high. The company does not track retail sales. They don't track the expense. They now tell you on the disclosure form that you may incur expenses. They treat them as though you just dial up whatever expenses you feel like. But they don't say how profitable or unprofitable any distributorship is. We think they do that because they don't want to know. And the fact is that they're losing money. So it's a system that's premised on losing money in your own business, but hoping to make it back because you get other people into the system. And when they lose their money, some of it comes to you. That's a pyramid scheme.
By the way, the other thing I would point out, imagine if you're on the board of directors of this company now. Maybe Herbalife told people, members of the board, not to watch it. I hope they did. Someone will tell them to watch it. But I would be concerned if I remember this board. And at a minimum, I'd have to investigate everything that we just identified. And if it's the slightest bit true, so there's a lot of legal work to do here. And I hope the board has good independent representation. And I think the other thing to point out here that concerns me is there are other people that have helped promote Herbalife. And unfortunately, they include some of the best law firms in the country, some of the best PR firms in the country, and some of the investment banks in the country. And I think that if I were at Moelis and Company, and Ken Moelis actively went to meet with my investors to try to scare them into redeeming from Pershing Square, ask yourself what legitimate investment bank would behave that way, and then also ask yourself what legitimate investment bank would continue to represent this company. It was Ken Moelis that advised the board to buy back $1.6 billion of the stock, $1.2 billion of which in the last 6 months in the face of the FTC investigation. If I were a shareholder of Moelis and Company, I'd be concerned about that. And the reason why I'd be concerned about that is that when investment banks get hired by pyramid schemes or any company, they get an indemnity to protect them from litigation. That makes them feel free to do whatever they want to do. But in this case, that indemnity is going to be worthless. And the leverage that was put on this company, the sad thing is this company borrowed $1.15 billion and spent another spent $1.6 billion buying back stocks, paid a whole bunch of dividends. That money is now gone, not available for victims. So what will the victims do? They'll sue the deep pockets. The deep pockets surround the company. Look, I tried to warn Price Waterhouse. Okay, I sent the CEO and chairman and general counsel of Price Waterhouse emails, maybe I'll release them, outlining in particularity why this company was a pyramid scheme. And they took a little longer to do their audit, and then they put out the financial statements. And that gave investors a lot of confidence. And so people went and bought Herbalife stock at $80 a share with the endorsement of Price Waterhouse. And the analysts used it as an endorsement to say we were wrong. And that's unfortunate. And if I were Price Waterhouse, I'd think very hard before approving the 10Q next week. And if I were the general counsel of the company, by the way, the other genius here is Brett Chapman. I forgot to mention him. He's the general counsel of Herbalife. He's the former chairman of the Direct Selling Association while he was general counsel of Herbalife. Right? You understand how this thing works? But there are a lot of enablers here. I mean, this is a moment for the country to reflect. That's how I think about it. And it's a moment for Boyd Schiller to reflect. And it's a moment for Joelle Frank to reflect. Joelle Frank, I know Joelle Frank well, she runs the best attack PR firm in the country. She is defending Allergan from a takeover bid, and she's great at it. And she's done a great job making Valiant look bad. Okay, and that's her job. I don't actually think there's anything wrong with that. I do think there's something very wrong with helping promote and defend a pyramid scheme. So let's assume for a moment that Boyd Schiller didn't know it was a pyramid scheme, and Ken Moelis didn't know it was a pyramid scheme, and Joelle Frank didn't know it was a pyramid scheme. Well, they do now. Or at a minimum, they know what they're doing in their nutrition clubs. Can they continue to represent the company? Yes, Michelle. By the way, Michelle is a reporter at the New York Post. Michelle has actually written some articles that are critical of Herbalife, and she's been subject to enormous attack as a result of it, because Herbalife does not like people who attack them. And people assume that I've bought Michelle because she's written articles. These are things that people say on the internet and on Twitter and Facebook or whatever. But she's a great reporter. She's done a fabulous job. She's actually the Christine Richard of Herbalife. Christine was the woman who dug into this thing tenaciously like a dog on a bumper and wouldn't let go. Okay, well, I don't mean to call you a dog on a bumper, but I think you've done a fabulous job, and I think it deserves recognition. But go ahead. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Can't hear you.
For that wonderful introduction. I have kind of a tough question, I think. You started this off by saying that Michael Johnson really started this by saying, you know, you wanted to go after these people that make $2 or $3 a day, that he learned this from Disney. Not that, but learned the strategy of going into other countries. But what is wrong? I think this is what people who are critical of what you've said might say. What is wrong with him going after these people? What is wrong with going after a low-income community? Many companies do that all the time. So
okay, well, let me clarify. Okay, so Unilever targets and markets to many of the people at the bottom of the pyramid. But what they're selling to them are products that improve their health. You know, they sell soap, and they sell a low-cost version of soap, and they reach out to communities where their products can help these people live healthier lives. The products are priced appropriately. People are not spending and borrowing from their friends to buy Unilever soap, and Unilever is doing good for the world in doing so. Absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever. But, okay, if you know that you're causing people to spend more money than they can afford to lose on a business opportunity that is a complete and total fraud, that by their own numbers, 99.8% don't make a living wage, okay? First of all, I think if you do that to a middle-class person that went to business school, shame on you, okay? You do that to a person who makes a couple dollars a day or $10 a day, $12 a day for the people in the last 17 countries that they went into, an average of whatever it is, $4,000 or $5,000. And that's really bad stuff, because they don't understand. I mean, Herbalife is brilliant. There's someone at Herbalife who's a genius at designing marketing plans. You know, the marketing plan of Herbalife, the middle-class marketing plan, if I call it that, is one designed to suck people in. And I wanted to have, we've Pershing Square Foundation financed a behavioral economics drive. Is a great way to understand human behavior. And I wanted to have one of the Harvard brilliant behavioral economists to look at this, but since I gave money to the school, I thought people would say it's conflicted. But someone's going to have to study this company and see how they did what they did. But it is incredibly brilliantly designed to suck people in, and these are the least financially sophisticated people in the world, and they're people who can't afford to lose money. The SEC has a standard for who can invest in a hedge fund, and that's someone who's made several $100,000 a year for the last few years or has a net worth of $1 million or more. And the reason why they have a net worth standard is, well, they don't want to give you a test for financial sophistication, but they assume if you have that kind of money, you can afford to lose some, and therefore will let you be exposed to riskier things. This is way riskier than investing in any hedge fund, right? Any hedge fund where 99.8% of the people lose everything, okay? That's before accounting for all the various expenses and time and energy and labor. So that's the issue. Yes, at the top there, sir. Middle.
Hello. Bill, it seems like the big schemes, when they decline, it seems like the big schemes are big market phenomenons. And when they decline together with a big market decline. So in 2002, when Enron declined, the decline coincided with the dot-com bubble bursting. And then to your point on Madoff in 2007, 2008, it coincided together with the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008.
Yes.
So here we have another scheme that seems to be a very big market phenomenon, supported by a lot of Latinos that are very hopeful in something better. And as long as you have a rising stock market that supports the idea of a higher stock price, that the scheme can keep going on until you get a bigger market decline that brings down the stock just because it's gotten out of proportion and it's very big at this stage. So do you think that to time the decline of Herbalife, you're going to have to a certain extent, time the decline of the broader market?
I don't think we're going to have to wait till then. And the reason for that is, the schemes become exposed. Warren Buffett says, when the tide rolls out, you see who's swimming naked. I guess what we're doing here is we're rolling out the tide. We are catalyzing, first, enormous scrutiny on the company. Now, there were some other people pushing against the tide, who were causing the tide to stay close to shore. And those were Wall Street people. Those were bullish analysts. Those were, the Carl Icahns of the world. A bunch of other hedge fund managers viewed this as a short squeeze opportunity, and a number of them colluded, we believe, in saying, hey, this is easy money. We'll announce a 4.9% position in the company in a few weeks. Why don't you guys all buy the stock? We'll create so much financial pain on Pershing Square and Bill Ackman that he'll be forced to capitulate. And why do you think Ken Moelis met with our investors? Because I'm a pretty stubborn guy. But if Ken Moelis could convince my investors to withdraw their capital, then we're done. Then we would have to cover. And so that, to me, was the last. Now, I'm an extremely, extremely persistent person. Extremely. And when I believe I am right and it is important, I will go to the end of the earth. Okay? So we're pushing back pretty hard against the tide. And once the tide starts going in the other direction, this thing implodes incredibly quickly, right? There are plenty of other pyramid schemes you can go work for. I'd take my distributorship to another one.
Bill, there's a question on the monitor.
On the monitor, in the U.S., who takes responsibility for sales taxes? Couldn't these sales tax records provide a roadmap to validate end consumption? David Clafter.
Yes, they could. And we don't think there's much sales tax revenue you're going to find going to local government.
Got to talk louder, I can't hear you.
We don't think you're going to see much sales tax being paid by these nutrition clubs. They should be, but we don't think they're...
Right. Have we found one nutrition club where they collected sales tax?
No.
Yes, in Puerto Rico, they started having people collect a sales tax. They now have like a point of sale way for doing this just in the last couple of months. And again, it's a bit confusing because they're not supposed to be retailing products in the clubs, but you hear people mention all over, what is this? It's like a store, they're selling products. You'll hear merchants in the neighborhood say, why don't they have to collect taxes? But for some reason in Puerto Rico, they have decided that, yeah, they're selling a product.
You could also look at the income tax returns of people who are distributors. If you're an independent business operator, you have to fill out Schedule C, where you show your income and your expenses and your taxable income.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to ask, just compare the claims that are being made about how much money people are making with what they're reporting to the IRS. That's a pretty interesting way to see whether someone is making what they say. How does Pershing Square intend to continue to express this short thesis since the expiration of your long put contract is very soon? Well, A few things. We own put contracts, yes. None of them expire before 2015. They are principally over-the-counter contracts. We have the ability to extend them if we choose to. We will make whatever decisions about trading that we think is in the best interest of our investors. Aren't these nutrition clubs also violating health codes? I'm assuming they don't have any food licenses or permits within the municipalities they reside in. David?
They may be. We have found some that do have the letter rating on their door.
Some, by the way, were photocopies of a letter rating from some other store.
But not all of them are, and we don't know if they're refrigerating their ingredients, whether they're using rubber gloves, etc.
If Herbalife is indeed breaking employment law by not paying a minimum wage, could that potentially entail a class action lawsuit and government fines? Would a sales ban render Herbalife's U.S. business valuation worthless? I think it's a great idea. If I were one of the minimum wage, non-paid workers in these nutrition clubs, I would certainly be, if I were a class action lawyer, I'd be contacting these people, I'd be suing Herbalife quickly. What is the smoking gun you think will get the company shut down? I think there is a armory of weaponry in the smoking gun department. You never mentioned how much classes cost to attend. What did you find there?
I think typically the classes are, they're fairly inexpensive. They're $3 to $5, and the idea is they cover the cost of the venue, also possibly some product at the class. Then they'll hold these weekend events, STSs. Those can be more like $30.
STS stands for Success Training Seminar.
Success Training Seminar.
Have you been able to prepare an estimate of the number of people in these Herbalife University-type systems, the graduation rate, the annual failure rate, newly founded nutrition clubs founded by graduates of these schools? I would ask Herbalife the question. We don't have that kind of granularity. Next question. Are there any more internet questions I missed, by the way? Up front here. Oh, that guy there. Whitney. He's a friend. It's a disclosure, so he might be able to ask a tough question. Go ahead, Whitney.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get lost in, there's so much detail here. It's such a complex global business. It always struck me that the company could so easily make you go away and prove that you're wrong by releasing some pretty straightforward data. Like, what is it that Tupperware and Amway, publish, release out there that you would just ask Herbalife to release that would show that it's a legitimate business?
Well, I don't think they can show that it's a legitimate business. I don't think there's any way they can do that on the nutrition club side. On the rest of their business, one of the things, Herbalife in January 9th, Des Walsh went on TV and said, well, if only Pershing Square had met with us, we could have answered their questions. We're happy to be we're a totally transparent company. We'll answer any and all questions that they have. So we said, fine. We sent them about 40 pages of questions. We released those questions publicly. Herbalife has yet to answer one. Their excuse for not answering the questions is they said, we're not a shareholder. I thought about buying 100 shares of stock and then calling them back and saying we're a shareholder, but I didn't want to own it. I thought it was too risky. Next. This guy up front in the white shirt and a tie that narrows him down. Yes, sir.
Hi. First, I know you have heard this before, but I saw your presentation on General Growth. Made some money for my family on that a while back, so thank you. But what do you think about, it sounds like this is centered on the nutrition clubs now, but what do you think about comparable companies like USANA? I understand, obviously, you think Herbalife is the biggest fraud, but what about things like USANA? Where do they fall in this spectrum?
We really have not, I've not done the work on other companies of consequence, and so therefore I wouldn't want to comment. Yes, lady there.
Hi, this is Chimei from Siena Finance. I work for Chinese media. I know you mentioned you're probably going to do a separate presentation on China market, but including New Skin, USANA, and Herbalife, they're huge in China. Can you just making general comments?
So I think it's great that you're from the Chinese press. We did make a presentation on Herbalife in China. I encourage you to go to our website, factsaboutherbalife.com. I encourage you to direct the Chinese regulator to that website. It's about a 2-hour webcast. We go through with a very high degree of particularity what the laws in China, what laws are violating, based with research, on-the-ground research. Herbalife in the last few days has been trying to get various members of the media to write a story saying that there's something flawed about our China research. But when I offered to the member of the media that what was fascinating is Herbalife somehow got emails that the researcher, the lead researcher who worked on this for us, that was hired by a contract research firm, got emails that she had sent to this guy Aaron Smith-Levin who runs this research company. And Herbalife had excerpted some of those emails, given them to some members of the press, or I don't know how members of the press got them, and then somehow accused us of not accurately depicting what was going on the ground in China. I got Aaron Smith-Levin on the phone immediately. I offered to the member of the press to give the transcripts and the recordings of the Nutrition Club meetings that were taking place, all of the documentation, and that took away the urgency to write this article on a Monday. I found it fascinating. I got a call on a Saturday, I won't name the member of the press, from a major news organization that said they had to write a story. They were getting enormous internal pressure to write a story about Herbalife in China this Monday. I said, well, that's kind of interesting, and I'm happy to help you with that story, but why does it have to come out this Monday? We've got a big presentation Tuesday morning. Well, the answer is Herbalife has been doing everything they can, pulling out all the stops to try to discredit us as much as they possibly can, and their best attempts were that, a couple of press releases we're going to hand you copies of. And by the way, on the way out, we're going to hand you a 60-page document, two-sided, so we're not wasting too much paper. And what we did is we excerpted, beginning from 2004, 2005, everything, pretty much all the relevant quotes that the company made on the conference calls about nutrition clubs. And they were, what's interesting is we don't give you many quotes in the last 12 months. Because in the last 12 months, they've been much more careful about what they say on conference calls. But the good news is before our presentation, they weren't careful. And so we have, there's a lot of fascinating quotes, and we didn't want to spend this whole time reading quotes to you. There's really good material on what's going on in India, okay? India. They say they've got an addressable market of 300 million people in India. I don't know, have you been to India recently? Did they need a lot of weight? Again, this is a weight loss powder, okay? I mean, this is a joke if it weren't such a crime. Yes? Question, next. Have we exhausted the room? Assume the sales methods are sketchy. Based on the financials, they seem to be selling a lot of shakes. Do you dispute that? No. By the way, where Price Waterhouse is right is the cash they're generating, except for the way they're accounting for Venezuela. That overstates the cash they're generating because they're generating in a currency where they're mismarking the currency. But generally, this company, they're buying back stock with cash and with borrowing power. What we're saying is not that the revenues they're reporting are not real. We're saying the method by which they've sucked $25 billion out of people since Michael Johnson became CEO of the company are illegal and involve deception, right? You know, the reported financials of the mafia are pretty good too, okay? Or a drug dealer, really good, okay? But it's illegal. The methods are so questionable, wouldn't there be more victims who would come forward in the U.S. since Herbalife's inception? The answer is there have been a lot, but it's like pulling teeth to get a victim to come forward. And the reasons for this are well known for people who study pyramid schemes. Number one, many of the victims don't realize that they're a victim. So imagine you're in the Nutrition Club program, you've been working your way up, you're getting these gowns and you're moving along and you're making progress, and then you fail. What they tell you at Herbalife, what you'll see in a lot of these videos, is you earn what you're worth. What they're telling you is you're worth very little. And people blame themselves, particularly people who've lost a job, low-income person. They blame themselves first. And they're taught to blame themselves. It requires a certain degree of sophistication to realize you've been cheated. So that's number one. Number two.
I think too, I mean, for these nutrition clubs, many people are undocumented, and the last thing they're going to do is hand their information over to the government. It's a huge risk. And considering people are probably brought in by friends, family members who may still be in this, I mean, what is the upside at that point to bringing this to the government's attention? There's none. There's only downside.
We did a video I encourage you to watch. We had 12 victims tell their story in a documentary. And that's out of, we probably have victim stories of 300 and something victims. These are people who have agreed to come forward. These are people who have given their stories to regulators. But that required us to pay money to Make the Road, which is a fabulous organization. We gave them $10,000 and they hired some staff to go out into their community in Queens and talk to people, see who would come forward. And we wrote a big check, $130,000 or so, to the Hispanic Federation, which is one of the most highly regarded Hispanic Latino organizations. And they hired a team to go out, and they've got a much more national scope, and talk to people and get their stories. We didn't hire them, as Herbalife claims, to bribe them to be on our side. Okay? And Herbalife is now doing exactly that. They're trying to buy various chapters of LULAC to get the head of LULAC, this guy, Brent Wilkes, who's come out incredibly, I've never met Brent Wilkes and I've never spoken to him. He's come out incredibly aggressively against Herbalife, and he's a real threat because he runs one of the most important politically active Latino organizations, League of United Latin American Citizens. And Herbalife is trying to destroy him. Why? Because he's a threat. Why aren't nutrition clubs shut down for using a place of residence as a business venue? The answer is I'm sure they're violating all kinds of zoning and other laws. The reason given not to pursue a class action is that lawyers settle. Why not use your own money to finance the lawsuit and bring them down? We thought about it. We thought very seriously about it. We hired, working with one of the best law firms in the country. They don't like us to advertise their name. Interesting. But they're a great law firm. And we prepared a complaint. But we thought we weren't not the best victim, and it would tarnish the complaint if it's being funded by a short seller. So that didn't really work. But we thought very seriously about it. What are your next steps today? What do you envision happening with the company, investors? I don't want to predict the future, but I guess my investment advice, if you own Herbalife stock, I would advise you to sell. I don't advise you to short the stock. Short selling is risky. Amway, Nu Skin, all do the same MLM similar to HLF. Why is just HLF a pyramid scheme? You have to do your own work on the others. I have not. I would say where Herbalife differentiates itself is they're the only pyramid scheme that has figured out how to go after what they call BOP, the bottom of the pyramid. Considering that Herbalife's proved to be a fraud in the U.S., what will happen with the international businesses? This thing will collapse under its own weight. It will collapse under its own weight because ultimately distributors will lose confidence. Now the company is pulling out all the stops today, and I haven't looked at the stock price, but what they do when there's really bad news like this is they use all of the remaining firepower to buy back stock, to kind of blunt the accusations. Here's a really interesting thing. On Herbalife, when there's something really negative going on, the stock price goes up. I think if I were at the SEC, I would take a very close look at the timing of Herbalife's buyback program and how they're spending that money. But that's my advice. Next question. Please comment further on the fact that board member Leroy Barnes sold 90% of his shares last week in the middle of an FTC investigation. That's up to Mr. Barnes. I assume he got legal advice. Yes, in the front. And then the lady in the back there on the left side.
Rhonda Schaffler with Reuters. Since you haven't looked at the stock price, I'll tell you it's up about 13%, bouncing around. Any specific reaction to the price move today, and is the street discrediting your comments here?
Again, this is exactly it. It doesn't surprise me at all. As you can tell, we've never been in this thing for the short term. We've been in this thing for the long term. And stock price movements have not affected our point of view, and you can only prop up a stock for so long. I guess this is, all I would tell you is if you own the stock, this is a great opportunity to sell. Could you speak to the Byrne Lounge decision briefly and how it relates to Herbalife, especially to how it possibly strengthens the FTC power to affect Herbalife? David.
Yeah, Byrne Lounge is a Ninth Circuit case. It's in Herbalife's home district. It upheld the FTC's prosecution of a pyramid scheme. It reconfirmed an earlier case called Omnutrition. Omnutrition was a pyramid scheme that was founded by a former senior Herbalife distributor. Omnutrition's marketing plan was nearly identical to Herbalife's. So the Byrne Lounge decision reaffirmed the general accepted principle that if your system is designed to promote recruiting over retailing, you're a pyramid.
All right, so let me just actually address the stock price thing because I think it's really important. I think it's an area where the press makes a major mistake. The press, I would say unfortunately, the media has become incredibly short-term. I think Bloomberg actually gives people compensation based on how stock prices do based on their stories. So if you write a story and the stock price goes up, they don't give you a specific bonus if that happens, but it affects how you're regarded. If you do a market-moving story and you're at a newswire reporter, that's a good thing. They also, I don't think that's actually, someone should take a look at that kind of from an incentive structure point of view. They look at the one-day price. They look at the referendum. What is the market saying? Look, taking on a pyramid scheme, these guys are going to fight to the end, and they're pulling out all the stops. What I would advise you is not to look at the stock price. It's irrelevant. I advise you to look at the facts. The media here, with a few exceptions, Michelle Solarier, Dan McCrum at the Financial Times, and the blogosphere actually has done, there's a guy, Matt Stewart, who is, I think, a genius, who's done incredible work on Herbalife. But I encourage, the media has not done a proper job investigating this company. You know, why do we have to go and meet? This is the thing that the New York Times used to do, right? The New York Times would, maybe it's because the budgets of the newspapers, you know, the Washington Post now is owned by Jeff Bezos. Hopefully now they have the resources to do real investigative reporting. That hasn't happened here. The whole debate has been about a short seller. Okay, what we're telling you is that there's a major fraud going on. Herbalife is going to use the fact that the stock price is up today to say that everyone's ignoring what we have to say. My advice is you probably shouldn't ignore it. Next. Up there, yes.
Herbalife offers their distributors the opportunity to sell back all their unused products, which I think refutes one of your earlier points where you claim that distributors had basements, garages filled with unused products. Do you think this would have led to the collapse of Herbalife already? Does it dispute that it's a pyramid at all?
No, first of all, you should take a look at the buyback program before we showed up. The buyback program before we showed up, number one, there was a 10% return fee that was 10% of the retail sales. So it was actually 20% of the product that you purchased from them. So you would lose, if you will, 20% of your money returning it to them. You yourself had to pay for shipping to ship it back to Herbalife. Herbalife's audit department would then audit you. They'd make you return any commissions that you had received from the company. They would ask you for your sales receipts. How many customers have you sold to? What are their names and addresses? You're required to provide this information. If you don't have adequate receipts, we're not going to return it. If the product is expired, we won't take it back. And by the way, you had no way of knowing that the product was expired because the expiration date, until we got involved, was a code, an alphanumeric code. Why did they use an alphanumeric code for an expiration date? The answer is they used it for an expiration date so that people who bought the product didn't know how long it was sitting in your basement. Herbalife has dramatically improved the buyback policy. The problem is it doesn't help the guys in the nutrition club. You can't return opened product. You're giving out free samples. You're selling some product to trainees. Go ahead.
One interesting example to advance and be, I believe it was a yellow card holder. Yellow card holders were told when you come to the trainings and the meetings, you got to take your pill box. I don't know if anybody's seen these. They're about this big, and they have about, I don't know, a dozen or more compartments. And you open all these products at like $25 a piece, and you dump them into the compartment. So each compartment has a different product. You snap the top back on, and when at certain points during the meeting, you're expected to shake the pill box. And everybody who has a yellow card will have the box. So all those products have been opened. There's no returning them. I mean, it's that cynical.
Right. They tell you to use the product. So you can tell people, you can make a product claim. I've lost weight. I've gotten off my blood pressure medication. I've cured cancer. Go on the web, do some work. I strongly encourage you to do so. The buyback program is much better today. The problem is they're not telling the poor Hispanic person at the nutrition club that there's a buyback program.
Yeah,
they're buying a shake. There's no return policy for the $3,000 they and their family members spent over 3 months qualifying to be to open your own club.
And people want to move the volume, right? There's a whole system that we talked about which says, reach this volume target, we're going to send you customers. So people buy all this volume. I think one of the most disturbing things you can see on the internet is feeding shakes to babies a year and under. This is common in Hispanic nutrition clubs, and it's a way to feed your children with the product that you're buying because you need to buy it anyway.
They're selling this stuff like it's food. Okay, it's overpriced, sugar, soy, and a bunch of other ingredients. Okay, we've had whistleblowers come forward about major manufacturing problems of the company, metal shards in the product, larvae. They're cleaning up their act, I think, on the manufacturing side. They're opening up a new facility in North Carolina, I think. I assume it will be state-of-the-art. But they didn't care about the product, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because no one, this was a pyramid scheme. It's not about the product. But they realized it's a vulnerability when a couple of employees went to the FDA. Yes? I can't hear you.
Hi, Nick Weber, Horace Greeley alumnus.
Okay.
Could you comment, or Mr. Clapper, could you comment on the Belgian court case that sided with Herbalife that Herbalife CEO talked about on CNBC before the presentation?
Yeah, essentially the Belgian court said, we're not really going to look to see whether...
But why don't you start with the history?
The history is that Herbalife was found to be a pyramid scheme in Belgium, and then it went on appeal. In Belgium, you're allowed to change the record while you're on appeal, so they tweaked a few elements in their program, and they told the court that we have a lot of internal consumption by our distributors, so you should count that as retail sales. And the court said, we're going to accept that. I don't think a U.S. court would be so blasé about whether internal sales are real retail or you need to have retail sales outside the distributor network.
By the way, where we were wrong at the beginning is I just didn't understand who was buying this product in these nutrition clubs. It just didn't make sense to me. I said, we can't believe there's any real retail demand for the product. How can you possibly sell this stuff out of a store where we can't put a sign on the outside? In fact, you're not even, according to the rules, allowed to make a retail sale. Who's going to sign up and become a member? It just didn't make any sense until we did the work, until Christine really led this effort, along with other members of the Pershing team, Elizabeth and others who did fabulous work. Other questions? Up there on the top.
Bill, you talked about how you yourself have looked at a possibility of a lawsuit, but it strikes me today that you've been pretty far out there calling the CEO a predator, calling the company a criminal enterprise, talking about the Nazis, the mafia, drug dealing. It almost seems as if like maybe you're trying to goad them into suing Pershing Square and yourself so you get access to discovery to help press your case further.
Sure, that would be great. But everything I say, I mean. I'm sorry.
I'm not suggesting that, but
Right.
it seems like you almost want them to take this to the next level.
No. Bring it on. Next, right here.
Hi, Bill. Kevin Robick. I'm a private investor. Just have a question for you. I understand the deceptive nature of how they sell the product. You spent a long time on that. But it seems like what you haven't, at least in today's presentation, you haven't put out there as much of a legal analysis. In other words, this investment relies on a legal analysis in the end. The fact that it's deceptive may or may not matter in the end. What really matters for the company to collapse is a legal analysis. I know you've commented on it.
Let me give you the easiest way this company collapses, okay? Not by finding it to be a pyramid scheme. The SEC is a securities regulator. They're a regulator of fraud. If the management of the company has made materially misleading statements about their business, about the way they characterize what's happening in nutrition clubs, that's actionable under the securities laws. So that's a much easier approach than the SEC is really, and by the way, I think the reason why I think the SEC hasn't acted, if I had to guess, is they really think of the FTC as kind of the leader in the pyramid scheme front. They're really more of a securities regulator. And the question is this a securities contract you're selling or not? In some cases, the SEC finds it to be, and therefore they bring a securities fraud case or they bring a pyramid case. In this case, the company has really good lawyers, and I don't know anything about the dialogue, if any, between the company and lawyers and the company and the SEC, but I would go after management for false statements. What's really happening in nutrition? Look, we have a conference call coming up. I'm looking forward to that. Next week, management's going to be on the line. We're going to have a 10Q filed with Pricewaterhouse and Primatur, the legal and Primatur. They're going to have a conference call. Let's see how they characterize what's really going on in nutrition clubs. If they've been lying, you cannot lie as a CEO of a public company about your business.
That's true. On the other hand, the SEC can only bring civil claim, and every single day there's a civil claim brought against the CEO where they write a check and it goes on. I mean,
Yeah, look, I think
there are a few banks that, that have written big checks lately.
The other place I would go, by the way,
is
the attorney. Stick with me for a second. Are the attorney generals, attorneys general. We got some very capable attorneys general who've already signed on to this one. There's something called the Martin Act, if you remember from Elliot Spitzer days. Sure. It's a very, very powerful kind of legal regime. There is a anti-pyramid provision in the Martin Act, but there's lots of anti-fraud stuff in the Martin Act. And this company is defrauding people in Queens, New York, a lot of them. There are a lot of nutrition clubs there. Let's assume for a moment that what we're saying is true, and I guarantee you we're going to give everything over to the New York AG, the Illinois AG, the SEC, the FTC. We're going to give them a roadmap for an easier case against the company. Pyramid cases are harder. They take a long time. They've got to prove something. There's like an economic analysis. Look, we need to change the law on this pyramid scheme side. And that will help. But we're not going to wait around for that. And by the way, I think it's a provable certainty that if once and if and when they get into a courtroom, they'll prove the thing's a pyramid scheme. But unfortunately, by then, if this thing keeps growing at the rate it's growing, you could have another 6 billion, 7 billion, 8 billion. What's interesting, the good thing about compounding is each successive year is much bigger than the previous year. That's a really bad thing if you're a pyramid scheme.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe.
We're getting done here. Do you see any evidence that Michael Johnson's relationship with Univision has protected the company from their scrutiny, or at least their eye? I have no knowledge of that. How long would you guess that Herbalife could sustain its business in the absence of regulatory intervention? How do you arrive at that estimate? I think it's very complicated to figure that out. They do have 3.5 million distributors, but there are 7 billion people in the world. And if you can go after the bottom of the pyramid, you can go for a very long time. Are you condemning the product? Do you think the product itself is healthy or just a business practice? There's a reason why Slim Fast sales have declined dramatically. It's not really an effective way to lose weight. I don't know if there's still product issues at the company, but the product is not the material part of the problem here. It's the fact that people are being defrauded, being sold what they call a business opportunity, which is a scam. You've spoken about the assumed credibility that a New York Stock Exchange listing and share price support, artificially created or otherwise, lend to the company. What is your reaction to the short-term gains in the price today? How do you think the short-term gains might temper the impact of your presentation? The effort to get the stock price up today is an orchestrated effort on the part of either people who own the stock and or Herbalife, who's likely buying back the stock, I would guess. And one day's trade is irrelevant. We've made that point from the beginning. At 83, people were calling a victory here. Who covers the overhead costs for all the nutrition clubs? The answer is the people distributor who works there. Do these clubs pay any sort of taxes? Doubt it. How does the government know if they're making money or being profitable legally? That's a good question. Don't know the answer. Next. How do you expect to reach Latino communities to show them they're being victims of a fraud? We had 6,000 people on the webcast 30 minutes before the webcast was about to start. I expect every Latino media organization to pay attention to this. Watch the video Herbalife released in the PR yesterday. Throughout most of it, they showed these so-called fit clubs. In many settings, it seems like Herbalife distributors are acting as personal trainers. Does Herbalife require distributors to be legally certified personal trainers before they conduct these types of physical trainings? Herbalife distributors qualified to be acting as personal trainers? I doubt. Christine, do you have a point of view on that?
I think, though we don't go into it in this presentation, that there's likely, it's similar.
It's another business method. The Fit Club is for upscale, kind of a middle-class U.S. customer, a British customer.
Right, and I think you can go through a training process, and assuming they have these kind of volume loading requirements, that's the certification. It has nothing to do with being a certified personal trainer.
Right. This thing is promoted through a series of business methods. That's what these are. Some enterprising distributor comes up with an idea in Mexico. It works for poor people. They roll it out across the globe. Someone comes up with this idea for fit clubs. It works for middle-class people in America, and someone rolls it out. There's something called a weight loss challenge. It's all the same. It's how do I get people to kind of sucked in? How do I get them to interact with me? It's like basic sales. You should read Zig Ziglar, The Art of Selling. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. You want to get in the door. You want to build confidence. You want people to get comfortable with you. You want to make the initial ticket small enough. You want to get them to continue to invest. You want other people to be going along. So it seems like something that makes sense. You want to have some aspirational people telling you what you could become. You want to prey on your aspirations. And, okay, why don't you become the largest shareholder and close the company down? That's a fascinating one. Next. Did anyone at Pershing Square or a paid affiliate of Pershing Square write the letter that Senator Markey sent to the FTC? Absolutely not. Let's talk about Senator Markey. Senator Markey I've never met, nor has anyone on our staff met. David Clafter and I met with Senator Markey's staff. Why did we meet with Senator Markey's staff? Because our government relations people told us that Senator Markey was a fierce consumer advocate and had been for 28 years in the Congress. He was only recently become a senator. We made a presentation to them like we made to 10 or 15 other members of Congress, senators that were willing to listen to what we had to say. We mostly met with staffs. They seemed interested. They spent an hour with us, and then we heard nothing. And then 4 months later, they wrote a letter to the Federal Trade Commission. And then Herbalife, in an ingenious PR move, and I encourage you to read this article, and it was one of the lowest moments in the New York Times, in the history of the New York Times, wrote an article basically implying that I bribed a senator to write this article. And it's a crazy article. It says that I gave money to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, which is true. What it doesn't mention is I gave money in 4 out of the 5 previous years to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. It says that my check cleared on the day that Senator Markey won his primary. I'd never heard of Senator Markey. I had no knowledge of his primary, and it was a pure coincidence that the check cleared on that day. The DSCC, I think, raises something like $300 million a year. My $32,000 is not going to move the needle at the DSCC. It said it wasn't clear, and the article says it's not clear how much of Mr. Ackman's money went to his campaign. That's sort of like saying you give money to United Way, and how much of their money went to some poor homeless person. I mean, it's crazy. My sister, the article also said, gave $500 to Senator Markey. Now, I didn't know that my sister gave $500 to Senator Markey. The article didn't mention that my sister lives in Massachusetts. And Senator Markey's a senator in Massachusetts, so I called my sister. I said, you know, how come you gave money to Senator Markey? She said, you know, Bill, I'm a Democratic softie. He sent me something in the mail, and I sent him $500. Well, that article was used. Why would that article appear in the New York Times? Because Herbalife's PR department, using whatever levers they can pull with Joel Frank and otherwise, got the New York Times to write a fraudulent article. A pretty incredible thing. Never seen that in my life. And it just tells you this is a PR machine. This is a manipulation machine. They're really good at it. They hire the best people in the world. And by the way, the previous year I gave money to the RSCC, the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee. I supported Romney for president. So they could have written that article whether the person who wrote the letter was a Republican or a Democrat. Because they could have said, last year, Mr. Ackman gave $32,000 to the RSCC. So anyway, if I'm worked up about that, you get the idea. What percentage of Nutrition Club revenues are to people who want to drink the product for the product's sake versus for the sake of advancing up the chain? I think the easiest way to answer that question is, if you look at the ingredients of this product, you look at the ingredients of SlimFast, they're pretty much the same, except SlimFast is made by a much higher quality company called Unilever. It's supported by advertising. It's available in every retail location, drugstore, GNC, etc. It's about 1/4 the price. If you really wanted the product, why wouldn't you buy the branded version at 1/4 the price? I don't think anyone's really buying because they want the product.
I think one thing too, it's Herbalife has tried to put the attention on the fact that most of these people drinking the product are discount consumers. And I think this is what this person is asking. Well, why couldn't they just be going into the club to spend $5? And of course, some of them could.
Bring the question back, please. We haven't finished the question. Right, go ahead.
But to take the attention away from how many distributors lose money, they've rebranded their distributors as members, and they say unless you become a sales leader, a supervisor, spend a significant amount of money, you're not really in this to build a big business. And I think what we saw from these, from Club 100 is these people start out very small, but they are not discount consumers. I mean, you don't go in every day and clean the bathroom of your nutrition club and stand out for 2 hours handing out flyers and agree to take shake making tests if you're a Costco discount consumer. But this is what Herbalife would have you believe about these people. They're discount consumers. That's all they're doing. Actually, they're very aggressively pursuing a business opportunity.
Why can't you argue that this is merely people spending $5 to sit with friends and have a healthy alternative to McDonald's? I think we've answered that question, but they're not spending $5 to have a shake with friends. As we've shown, I think, with a pretty incredible degree of particularity, they're earning their way up the Club 100 plan, the Success University plan, running out of time. Yes, Herbalife falsely advertises to customers about the costs required to be a successful distributor. What percentage of distributors have lost money? A very, very, very high percent. Herbalife plans to expand into Africa. What challenges do you see Herbalife facing when doing so? Well, the low-income nature of the people there. Robert Chapman was just interviewed on CNBC. He says he bought enough over the past 24 hours to make Herbalife his biggest holding ever. It's going to $150 by next summer. What do you think about his statement? I think that Robert Chapman told Bloomberg he managed $1 billion. He told CNBC he managed several $100 million. I don't believe he manages $10 million, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think he's overstated his relative role here. He's free to do whatever he wants, buy and sell stocks. I think he's used this Herbalife opportunity for kind of self-promotion reasons. But that's just my point of view. If you want to bet with Bob Chapman, you should buy the stock. Why did Shane, who headed up initial research on Herbalife, leave Pershing Square? The answer is he got burned out. As you can tell, this is a major, major enterprise. And Shane was like, you know what? I just got married. It's time to take a break. Could you give an estimate of the amount of money that Herbalife has vacuumed from the targeted communities in the country and other countries pursuing nutritional growth? I mean, it's in the billions of dollars. Next. How do you differentiate the odds of succeeding as a Herbalife distributor, the chances of winning the lottery, a government-sanctioned proposition with negative expected return from an odds perspective that presumably targets less financially sophisticated people? Perhaps the lottery has greater disclosure. The answer is when people buy a lottery ticket, they know that the probability of succeeding is very small. When people buy into the Herbalife pyramid scheme, they're told that they're going to become a president's team member.
A lottery ticket's not a job.
Right. You don't have to spend a lot of your time. You don't spend several months working on your lottery ticket and cleaning toilets. Nutrition Club entrance fee is for a ticket. These products are being given for free. Therefore, there are no retail sales from these clubs. Why aren't you emphasizing that more? That's a great point. There are no retail sales from these clubs. Next. Want to confirm the catalyst for the demise is regulatory action. Aside from the numerous government agencies, are there any other catalysts Pershing foresees or has in its pocket to result in the falling of the empire? Time will tell. Have you considered Herbalife's actual products? Are they any good? The answer is we don't think so. They're not any better, as far as we can tell, than I would trust the products from Unilever a lot more than Herbalife. Years ago, you invested in Prepaid Legal, which sold legal insurance through an MLO channel. My former firm, Gotham Partners. What did Prepaid Legal do right with its business model that made you bullish compared to what Herbalife does that makes you short the stock? I was not the lead on Prepaid, but what I will tell you is you were buying a service. There was no inventory loading. People did not have to buy $3,000 worth of legal contracts that they then tried to sell to their friends. For $150, for a year, you got someone who would help you fight a traffic ticket, write a will, various kinds of contracts, and it was a low-cost legal plan that we thought was a legitimate product, priced at a reasonable price. You got referral commissions for recruiting others, but there weren't people at the top of the pyramid making $5 million. There were no nutrition clubs. There was no inventory loading. Those were some of the factors. Do you have any correspondence with David Einhorn about Herbalife? Any thoughts from other prominent investors? The answer is no. Given that the world is not black and white, what can Herbalife do to meet any FTC issues, get a clean bill of health? Well, a clean bill of health, with an FTC clean bill of health, would the stock have material multiple expansion? This is kind of the bull case. The bull case is the FTC is going to go in and the FTC is going to fine Herbalife, punish a few rogue distributors. Herbalife's going to change its business methods, increase the compliance department, and then go back to doing business. The problem with that methodology is, now Herbalife scrambles every time we say something about the company. We know this because we've talked to people in the compliance department at Herbalife, and they try to shut down whatever illegal practice that we identify. The problem here is, if they try to shut down Club 100 or University del Éxito or any of these training programs that the company promotes, the clubs will die. As you know from the slide, 90%, 9 out of 10 fail that don't use this system. Well, if they fail, 40% of the revenues go away. And so we think by becoming legal, they die. Why? Because we don't think there's fundamental demand for the product. And this company, in order to exist, has to have fundamental demand for the product. Otherwise, they rely on business deception, business fraud. Do employees in the higher parts of the hierarchy, management, Club 100 owners, recruiters, should be criminally sued? I don't want to comment. Next. You spent $50 million presenting research, and the market reaction over 2 years shows you have not proved it. If you had subpoena power, what documents would allow you to prove to a certainty that Herbalife is a pyramid scheme? David, any comment?
We'd get them to answer our 40 pages of questions.
That would be a start. 40 pages of questions would be a start. But actually, I think with access to just the distributor files, looking at the ordering patterns, looking at...
turnovers.
What?
Turnover rates.
Turnover rates of distributors. How many of these people fail? Looking at the tax returns of the distributors and comparing those to the statements they make about how profitable their businesses are. The nutrition clubs are 40% of revenue. What other forms of revenue are found to be frivolous? We think pretty much the rest. Various kinds of business methods, weight loss challenges. All right, we've got to call it a day. We've done our best to answer every question. You guys have been incredibly patient. Stay tuned. Thank you.